I never imagined a home could feel so suffocating, so utterly invaded by darkness, until that night. I'd always thought I was safe behind my locked door, until the silence shattered with the sound of a door forced open and a stranger's madness creeping in. In that desperate moment, it wasn't just my pride that held a knife, it was my will to survive. It was a drizzly October evening, the kind that makes every sound seem amplified, every drop of rain a metronome marking the passage of time. I was 17, in the in-between space of adolescence and adulthood, living in a modest home I shared with my family's old pit bull, Roxy. My parents were out for the night, and I was alone with Roxy, a routine that had become my sanctuary since my father had left and my mother worked long hours. Yet that night, my home turned into a stage for a terror I could neither predict nor prevent. I had been in bed by 10 p.m., the steady hum of the rain on the roof lulling me into half-sleep. The comforting snores of Roxy at the foot of my bed were the only proof that I wasn't utterly alone. Then, around 2:30 a.m., I was startled awake by the jarring sound of shattering glass. My heart thundered in the dark silence. I lay still for a few agonizing seconds, trying to determine if it were just a branch tapping against the window or something more sinister. I couldn't sleep after that. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, I crept out of my room, clutching the heavy darkness like a veil. I moved silently through the hallway, with every shadow and every sound spiking my alertness. As I reached the kitchen, a place normally warm with the comforting glow of the refrigerator and counters, I saw it. The front door, which I was sure had been locked, had been forced open. Rainwater mixed with blood streaks along the glass of a shattered window near the door. I ducked behind the kitchen island, trembling, and fumbled to find something to defend myself with. My gaze fell on a large kitchen knife resting on the counter. In that moment, it seemed like the one thing that could save me. I gripped it tightly, my nails digging into the handle, every beat of my heart echoing the rising dread of the unknown intruder. Every muscle in me screamed to run, yet something in me, an instinct I couldn't ignore, forced me to stand my ground. As I edged toward the open door, I heard his footsteps, soft at first but growing heavier, an unsteady rhythm that betrayed a crazed determination. I retreated, my back pressing against the cold ceramic of the floor tiles, as my eyes adjusted to the silhouettes moving in the dim light of the hallway. There, moving slowly and deliberately, was a figure tall, gaunt, and wild-eyed, with a sinister expression that said he belonged to another world entirely. His presence was like a dark stain in the comforting light of my familiar home. I could barely breathe as I peered out from my hiding spot. The intruder's ragged breathing and shuffling footsteps made it clear he wasn't just passing through, he was searching, invading every corner of my haven as if he were a ghost of some twisted desire. My mind raced, and in those frenzied seconds, I remembered the old pit bull, Roxy, sleeping soundly on the rug. Roxy, my steadfast companion with her alert ears and protective bark, had always been gentle, but when provoked, she could be ferocious. In the midst of panic, I knew what I had to do. I crept back to my room and grabbed Roxy's leash and collar. I recalled how many times Roxy had chased off stray cats and intruders in the yard. Now, I needed her inside, fueled by a primal loyalty that could turn the tide. Gently, I coaxed her awake with hushed words. Roxy's eyes snapped open, and I sensed something in them changed. She knew, in that charged moment, that something was terribly wrong. I fixed the knife in my grip and, with shaking hands, reassured her with a quiet, "Stay with me, girl." Every step I took back into the kitchen sent echoes of my ragged breathing through the room. I made my way to the back of the house, every sound magnified. The intruder was still there. I heard him mutter something unintelligible near the door to the dining room. The once familiar home now felt alien and menacing. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I stepped into the open area of the foyer. I could see the intruder now, moving deliberately toward the stairs. He paused as if checking the floor, his eyes glinting in the little light that filtered through the broken window. The sickening mix of fear and resolve surged in me. I raised the knife, but my body trembled too much, and I realized I couldn't outrun him on my own. I had to use what advantage I had. "Roxy," I called as softly as I could. At that, Roxy broke free from her groggy state. She leapt forward with an energy that belied her age. My heart pounded as I watched her, the embodiment of fierce loyalty and canine courage. Roxy lunged at the intruder before he could react, her strong jaws snapping ferociously. The man staggered back, his face contorted in pain and shock. In that split second of chaos, I darted forward, channeling every ounce of adrenaline into one desperate act. With trembling arms, I approached him, the kitchen knife glinting like a shard of moonlight in the gloom. I couldn't see his eyes clearly now. They were wild and unbalanced. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice cracking. The intruder, disoriented by Roxy's sudden attack, swung wildly with a desperate, uncoordinated motion, and the knife found its mark. A sick, what sound filled the room, an agonizing, last breath escaping him as he collapsed onto the floor. I stood there, weapon trembling, heart racing, as Roxy continued to bark fiercely until her back was against me. The silent intruder lay sprawled on the cold tile, his eyes vacant, his madness finally snuffed out by a young man defending his sanctuary. For a long moment, all was still. Then, the shock of realization hit me. This wasn't a random act of violence orchestrated by a drunk and petty criminal. It was something much more calculated, a desperate intrusion into a place of safety. My mind reeled with unanswered questions. Who was he? What had he been searching for in my home? Had he been alone? Or was someone else waiting in the shadows? I couldn't answer any of them now. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers, my voice barely a whisper as I recounted the chaos. The dispatcher's calm, measured tone contrasted sharply with my own racing panic. I was told that officers and paramedics were on their way, that they would need to secure the scene. I stayed on the line, my eyes never leaving the fallen figure, as I explained every detail, the sound of shattered glass, my locked door left open in a moment of carelessness, and the way Roxy had lunged without hesitation as if she had been trained for this moment. When the police arrived, I was barely able to speak. They moved methodically, securing the premises and taking statements. One of the officers crouched by the body, his brow furrowed as he examined the knife wound. I could see a hint of something in his eyes, a mixture of pity and relief, as he assured me that I'd done the right thing. But inside, a cold dread kept creeping in. Later, as the adrenaline subsided, I sat alone in the now quiet living room, the harsh overhead lights illuminating every scar in the floor and every drop of blood that I couldn't quite wipe away. My hands shook, not just from the fight but from the realization that even a place you call home isn't immune to darkness. I kept replaying the events in my mind. The abrupt shattering of normalcy, the intrusion of the uninvited, and the surreal moment when a loyal dog and a desperate teen took a stand against madness. I couldn't sleep for days. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow in the hallway reminded me that the memory of that nightmare was etched into the very walls of my home. I began to wonder if I'd ever feel safe again. The pit bull, Roxy, though now injured from the struggle, nuzzled me as if to say, "We did it. We fought back." But even her warm, reassuring eyes couldn't banish the echo of his frantic whispers and the thud of his boots on my floor. In the weeks that followed, police investigators combed through every detail, but the man was a ghost, with no ID, no fingerprints that could be matched, no rational explanation for his intrusion. Some said he might have been a drifter with nothing to lose, others whispered of darker, more methodical premeditation behind his actions. I wasn't sure I could accept any explanation. Instead, I clung to the concrete truth of that fateful night. I, with a trembling kitchen knife, had repelled an uninvited terror in my own home, and, with Roxy's fierce loyalty, had pushed back the encroaching darkness. Now, weeks later, I still keep that knife in a locked drawer by the back door, ever ready, if the shadows should return. And sometimes, late at night, in the silence that follows the rush of sleep, I feel my pulse quicken and wonder if the echo of his footsteps has finally faded, or if somewhere out there, another intruder lurks, waiting for a chance to breach a sanctuary that can never be truly secured. I know now that safety is an illusion. Home is not a fortress. But in that realization lies a quiet determination. Never again will I let the darkness push me into fear. Instead, I'll stand my ground, as I did that night, armed with a knife, a loyal friend, and the unwavering will to remain alive even when the shadows seem all too eager to take over. And in that determination, I find a bittersweet strength, one forged in the crucible of terror, yet tempered by the knowledge that in the end, we are the only ones who truly decide who gets to keep the light on. It is strange, isn't it, how ordinary places become haunted, not by ghosts, but by moments. And it was the shallow end of a suburban pool where I learned what kind of horrors can wear a mother's smile. I was 7 years old the summer the sky turned a little darker, not by clouds, but by understanding. The pool had always been my sanctuary, a long, chlorinated stretch nestled beside the town's aging park, half hedged in by trees and bleached fences. The kind of place where children's laughter echoed like birdsong and adults sat sunburnt and drowsy behind magazines. My mother used to read paperback thrillers on a faded beach chair while I waded in the shallow inn beneath the faux palm fountain that dumped water like a lazy monsoon. That day was like any other. Warm sun, cool water, the distant sound of a lawnmower. I was pretending the splash pad was a rainforest, and the water droplets falling from the giant fake tree were enchanted. It was safe, predictable, and yet, even then, I recall a tension in the air I couldn't name. Like the static before a storm that never comes. She appeared beside me without much ceremony. A woman, middle-aged, pale as unbaked dough, wearing dark sunglasses and a sun hat pulled low. She smiled, and the smile felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. "Hello there," she said, her voice perfectly average. Not sweet, not cold, just blank. I looked up from my game. "Hi, these are my kids," she said, motioning to a boy and a girl standing behind her. The boy looked to be maybe 11 or 12, the girl younger, 4, perhaps. Neither smiled. They just stood there, expectant, like chess pieces waiting for a move. "Would you play with them?" she asked, still smiling. Something in me resisted. The kind of slow bubbling hesitation a child rarely recognizes until much later. But I was polite, always polite. So I nodded. The three of us wandered to the big slide. The older boy and I went up first while the girl stayed below, kicking water. We climbed in silence. I don't remember who spoke first, but he asked my name, and I gave it. I asked his, and he hesitated. "Billy," he said eventually. It was the way he said it that stuck with me, like someone borrowing a name, trying it on for size. After the second slide, he pulled me aside behind the base of the stairs. His voice dropped low, uncertain. "If she asked you to go with us, don't." "What?" I blinked. He looked back at the woman. She sat on the edge of a lounge chair now, her sunglasses turned toward us. She's not really my mom," he whispered. "She says she is, but don't go." There was such quiet terror in his voice. I almost thought he was acting. Children do that, after all. Invent stories. Embellish. But his hands were trembling. That wasn't make-believe. I tried to shrug it off. Returned to the fountain area. Told myself maybe Billy was just being weird. Maybe they were visiting relatives. Maybe I was misreading things. I remember being cold. Not from the water, but from something else. That kind of chill that settles between the shoulder blades, beneath the skin. Instinct, I suppose. Minutes passed. 5, maybe 10. Then the woman came back. She bent down to my level with a smile that was too wide, like she was trying to mimic an expression she didn't understand. "We're going to get lunch," she said. "Would you like to come with us? We're getting ice cream." I shook my head. "No thanks." "You sure?" she said sing-song. "We'll get you a toy. A doll, maybe." "No," I repeated, glancing toward the chairs. My mother wasn't where I left her. Panic prickled. Then she reached for my wrist. Her hand was soft, unnaturally so, like wet cotton. Her grip tightened, nails biting into skin that had soaked too long in the pool. And still, she smiled. "Come on now," she said gently. "Don't be shy." I yanked back. She didn't let go, so I screamed. No one noticed. Or rather, no one thought anything of it. Just a child being difficult. Just a mother dealing with a tantrum. I bit her. Hard. She gasped, not in pain, but in surprise. And then I ran. I don't remember choosing the women's restroom. I don't remember the layout of the stalls, or how I ended up crouched behind a plastic curtain, shaking. But I remember the silence. The sound of water dripping from my hair. My own breath, ragged and wet. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Rubber soles on tile. She spoke. "You're mine now," she said, not loudly. Not angrily. Just as if stating a fact. I don't remember what I did next. Maybe screamed again. Maybe I just ran. I burst out of the restroom like something feral and frantic. And there, beyond the chain-link fence, was my mother. She had pizza in her hand and a book tucked under her arm. I don't remember what I shouted. Just that she dropped everything and ran to meet me at the gate. By the time police arrived, the woman and her children were gone. I don't recall much about that summer after. My memory is clouded, blurry, but that moment never left. And years later, in the fluorescent light of a Walmart foyer, I saw a bulletin board. Missing children. Photos yellowed with time. Faces etched in worry. And there he was. Billy, 9 years old. Gone without a trace. And beside him, the girl. The little one from the pool. Her eyes wide and blank. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the sound of dripping water. Not the faucet. Not the rain. Something else. I don't go to pools anymore. And when I see a woman with dark glasses and a little girl holding her hand too tightly, I cross the street. I don't make eye contact. I don't wave. I just walk a little faster. Because sometimes the monsters don't live in nightmares. They live in daylight and wear sunscreen and offer ice cream. And they never stop smiling. I remember the way the carpet smelled, synthetic, dusty, laced with the sticky sweetness of spilled soda. I remember the lights too bright, too fast. And I remember her. Not her name, just her smile. We were visiting Laughlin, a desert town whose glamour had dried up years before, leaving behind little more than slot machines, sad buffets, and windowless arcades that clung to their blinking machines like memories that refused to die. I must have been 6, maybe 7. Old enough to feel grown up in a placement for grown-ups, but young enough to believe magic still lived in flashing tickets and jingling tokens. Caroline had taken us there, not my mother, but something close. One of those women who float through childhood like half-formed ants, too familiar to question, too impermanent to hold. She liked casinos more than she liked children, but she was good at pretending. The arcade was a glowing sanctuary tucked into the belly of the Colorado Belle, that odd riverboat-shaped casino where neon met nostalgia. Inside, the air was cool and recycled, scented faintly of nicotine masked by artificial fruit. I was playing skee-ball, climbing the ramp instead of rolling the balls properly, cheating in the innocent way that children do. I was proud of my cleverness. I was winning. She saw me. The woman. She was standing behind one of the claw machines, watching me. Her hair was dark, not just dyed, but painted on, it seemed, like she'd been dipped in oil. Her skin was sallow, stretched too tight over bones that didn't seem to fit. And her smile. That's what I remember. The smile that said she saw me, really saw me, and liked what she saw. You're good at that, she said, stepping closer. Smart kid. I blinked up at her, caught mid-scamper, ball in hand. Want to come with me? She asked. Just like that. As if she were offering a piece of gum. Children don't understand danger in the way adults do. They don't feel its shape, they feel its absence. And in that moment, standing there under the flicker of faulty fluorescent bulbs, I didn't feel scared. Not yet. I remember thinking, she's not yelling at me for climbing the ramp. That meant she was kind, right? And yet, something coiled in my stomach. A quiet flicker, like a match refusing to strike. I didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed, just a little. You're not in trouble, she said, softer now. I just thought maybe you'd like to win something real. I've got toys. Dolls. Better than tickets. She reached out, not a grab, but an invitation. A floating hand, inches from my shoulder. And then she looked past me. Her face changed, not panic, exactly, but calculation. She stepped back, smiled again, but now it was thin, cracked. I turned. 2 men in uniforms, security, maybe police, stood near the entrance. Caroline was with them, gesturing wildly, pointing. When I looked back, the woman was already walking away. They didn't cuff her. They didn't shout. They spoke to her in low, measured tones, like trying not to wake a sleeping dog. One of the men put a hand on her elbow, and she flinched. For just a moment, the mask slipped. She snarled something. I couldn't hear what, but the look she gave me as they let her out. Not hate, not anger. Something worse. Recognition. The rest of the day is a blur. I don't remember the drive home, or how Caroline explained things. I only remember how quiet she was afterward. She didn't look at me the same. Not quite. And I didn't tell my parents. I wanted to, but when I finally asked them years later if they remembered the day I was almost kidnapped, they said no. Shrugged it off. Called it a dream. But I remember. I remember the red blinking lights of the skee-ball machine. I remember her breath sickly sweet, like rotting bubblegum. And I remember how close her hand got to my shoulder. Years later, I searched online. Just curiosity, I told myself. Laughlin arrests, early 2000s. No specific reason. And then I found her. A mugshot. Hollow eyes, that same black hair hanging in greasy strands. Repeat offender. Multiple abduction attempts. Known for targeting casinos and amusement centers. They say memory fades with time. But not all memories. Some stay sharp, like glass at the bottom of a pool. And every now and then, I dream of blinking lights, of carpet that smells like sugar and fear, and a woman's voice saying, "Want to come with me?" I was 11 when I learned that danger didn't always wear a mask or carry a blade. Sometimes it smiled. Sometimes it smelled of roses and wore pearl earrings. And sometimes it came in the shape of two women, laughing just a bit too much. We were let out early that day. A mercy from the heat, perhaps, or maybe a teacher's guilt wrapped up in the excuse of end-of-term fun. Whatever the reason, our class wandered to Hollingsworth Park under the watchful eye of two overworked teachers who stopped counting heads after snack time. The park was large and sparsely attended. A few metal swings, chipped red paint on the slide, and benches scattered like forgotten intentions. Beyond that, fields of patchy grass and trees that whispered when the breeze passed through their limbs. Nikki and I, inseparable as always, drifted toward the swings. We wanted distance. Time to talk. Time to pretend the world was still the size of our schoolyard. We sat, rocked slowly, not swinging really, just moving enough to keep the chains from creaking. I don't want to go to Marley High, Nikki said suddenly. It's all uniforms and silent lunches. I told her that where I was going, they had lockers, actual lockers, like in American movies. We laughed about what we'd keep in them. Secrets, mostly. Maybe candy. Then I saw them. Two women walking across the grass. They didn't look out of place, not exactly. But they didn't look like they belonged either. Both were well dressed for a park. One in a cream-colored blouse and slacks, the other in a floral skirt that brushed her ankles as she walked. They weren't pushing strollers. They weren't carrying anything. They weren't heading for the swings. They were heading for us. The one in the blouse did most of the talking. "Hello, girls. Skipping school?" she asked, and laughed as if that had been a joke. It hadn't been funny, but Nikki offered a polite smile, and I, ever the polite one, answered truthfully. "No, our class is here." "Oh," the other one said, tilting her head slightly. She had auburn hair, parted down the middle and pinned back with a barrette. Her face held a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just the two of you?" "No," I said again. "We're with our teachers. Over there." I pointed vaguely in the direction of the picnic tables. "Ah, good," said the blouse woman. "Good to know someone's watching." I didn't like the way she said it. Not worried. Not reassured. Just interested. They didn't leave. They asked our names. Our ages. If we were best friends. They asked if we lived nearby. If we liked being alone. The woman in the floral skirt didn't speak much. She just stood there, her arms crossed, watching me. Her smile never moved. Neither did her eyes. Then came the word. "We're lesbians," the blouse woman said, almost proudly, as if revealing a badge. The other woman chuckled. The sound was hollow. "Do you know what that means?" she asked. I remember the pause, the tightening in my chest. I didn't really, but I nodded anyway, because I thought that was the right thing to do. Because when adults ask questions, you answer them. "Do you think you're lesbians?" The woman asked me directly, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. Nikki shifted uncomfortably. I could feel her unease now, tangible and hot like the summer air. "I don't know," I murmured. And then, silence. Not an awkward silence. Not a shy silence. A loaded silence. The kind of silence that feels like standing on the edge of something tall and invisible. The blouse woman leaned in. "You're a clever girl," she whispered, as if it were a secret. "Too clever for your own good." That's when Nikki stood up abruptly. "We need to get a teacher," she said too loudly, and before I could react, she was running. And I was alone. They moved in closer. One in front, one behind. I stayed on the swing rigid. My fingers gripped the chains until they squeaked. My heart was pounding now, not with fear exactly, but with certainty. The sudden, horrible certainty that something was very, very wrong. The floral woman crouched beside me. Her perfume was overpowering, sweet and sickly, like crushed petals left too long in the sun. "You shouldn't be rude," she said. Her hand reached out, not to grab, but to brush my knee. A small gesture, a familiar one. But from her, it was wrong. It turned the world upside down. I recoiled. The chain jerked, and the swing jolted sideways. I stumbled off, knees scraping the dusty ground, and scrambled to my feet. They didn't chase me. Not really. They just stood there, watching. "Go on then," the blouse woman called out. "Run back to your teachers. Tell them we said hello." She laughed. The other one joined in. I don't remember what I said to the teachers. Something about being scared. About women in the park who were asking weird questions. One of them frowned, but waved it off. "Probably just locals," she said. "Harmless." Nikki's face was pale when I found her. We didn't speak for a long time. When we got on the bus to go home, I sat by the window. I watched the trees blur past and thought about that smile, the one that never moved, never faltered. Years later, in my first year of university, I had a professor who taught criminal psychology. One day, during a seminar, he told us something I never forgot. Predators rarely look like predators, he said. They look like friends. They look like lovers. They look like the person you'd ask for directions. That's the trick. I thought about the swing set, and the perfume, and the laughter. I went back to Hollingsworth Park once, when I was 24, just to see it again. The swings were still there, though rusted now. The grass was longer. The benches cracked. I stood for a long time, just watching. Not for them. No, they were long gone. I'm sure. But I thought, maybe the park remembered. Maybe it knew. And somewhere, out there, two women still laugh at the memory of a clever girl who didn't know quite enough. There's a particular kind of fear that only grows in the rearview mirror. At first, it's just headlights. But the longer they stay there, the more they begin to feel like ice. I wasn't new to long drives. I'd been commuting 50 minutes each way since the store transferred me to a new location. The hours were long, the pay not quite worth it, and the customers the same brand of politely bitter no matter the zip code. But I didn't mind. Not really. The road was my solitude. I'd roll the windows down, crank up my music, Southern Cannibal or old murder ballads, and let the white lines blur the day behind me. That night, I left late, closed up shop, counted the till, made the bank deposit, and swung by a McDonald's drive-thru for a sad little dinner. Fries, lukewarm nuggets, and regret. I was tired, the kind of tired that fogs the mind but keeps the hands on autopilot. I typed my home address into the GPS without much thought, not realizing until I was half a county out that I'd chosen the same street in the wrong town. Just a stupid mistake. But mistakes have consequences. I corrected the GPS, got off at the next exit. Circled back. I was annoyed, mostly with myself, and a little hungry still. I merged onto the freeway again, the right one this time. That's when I noticed the truck. It was subtle at first. A flash of headlights in my rear view. Just a little too close. I figured he'd pass me. He didn't. He stayed tight behind me, a little too tight. When I sped up, so did he. When I slowed, he adjusted. I told myself it was nothing. People drive stupid all the time. Maybe he was texting. Maybe he didn't know how to use cruise control. Or maybe, my favorite theory, he just happened to be going the same way I was. Still, the unease bloomed. I called my husband. "There's a truck behind me," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Keeps changing lanes, but always ends up right behind me again." He chuckled. "Probably just some jerk who doesn't know how to drive." Yeah, I agreed. Probably. But even as I said it, my eyes flicked to the mirror again. Still there. Still too close. I hung up after a while. Didn't want to worry him. Didn't want to worry myself, either. But the truck kept following. Every time I passed a car, it followed. Every lane change. Every exit I almost took and swerved back from, it mirrored me, perfectly. I told myself again, coincidence. Roads only go one way out here. Not like the guys hunting me. Not like easy. The high beams flashed. Not long, not enough to blind me, but just enough to say, "I see you." That's when I stopped pretending. I started testing him. I sped up. So did he. I slowed down, he'd ride my bumper, then back off, only to return. I took a wide arc into another lane, then quickly switched again. He kept pace like a shadow. I turned the radio off. The silence in the car was immediate, oppressive. I could hear my own breath, my fingers clenching the wheel. Then, finally, I saw it. A cluster of cars ahead. Brake lights like a city of fireflies. I weaved between them, ducking and diving, hoping to vanish in the mess. For a minute, I thought it worked. No headlights. Just road. Just me. I glanced again. The truck was gone. Relief hit me in a wave so strong I nearly cried. I shook my head, laughed nervously, and told myself I'd been paranoid. Stressed. Overtired. Then I passed an overpass. And there he was, waiting at the next on-ramp. Waiting. He merged behind me like he'd never left. I didn't call the cops. Didn't have his license plate. Didn't know what to say beyond, "A truck is following me and I feel like prey." So I did the only thing I could. I ran. Not off the road, not into a ditch, but I drove like I was being hunted. Because I was. I weaved through traffic, ducked under bridges, and finally exited into a maze of neighborhood streets I didn't know, hoping to lose him in the tangle of cul-de-sacs and identical lawns. It took 10 minutes. 10 long, breathless minutes. But when I finally parked beneath a dead street lamp, cut the engine, and waited, the truck never came. I don't know who he was. I don't know what he wanted. Maybe it was nothing. But sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night, I check the mirror just a little too often. I watch the headlights just a little too long. And sometimes, when the road is quiet and the world is still, I swear I can feel him out there, waiting for me to take the wrong turn again. They say when you're about to die, time slows down. But they never tell you what it feels like to wake up inside the moment death misses you by inches. For me, it felt like a scream with no sound. It was the kind of tire that settles in your bones, not just from the travel, but from the liminal space of airports and layovers, of blinking fluorescent lights and people who look like ghosts under terminal signs. My brother and I had just landed after a day of flying back from visiting family. It was close to 9 p.m., and the sky outside the airport was bleeding that last shade of orange into black. Our uncle picked us up, dropped us at his house to retrieve my brother's car, and told us, politely, that we'd have to make the rest of the trip home on our own. We didn't argue. We just got in the car and drove. Fast food wrappers in the back seat. A dashboard light that flickered for a moment, then disappeared. I remember thinking the world looked unreal out there, how the road stretched endlessly ahead, glowing in the headlights like a ribbon unraveling into nowhere. And then, I slept. I don't know what woke me. Maybe it was the way the car twisted, or the sudden, terrifying weightlessness, like the world had yanked the floor out from under me. I remember my shoulder slamming into the door. My brother's voice, sharp and urgent. A blur of lights outside the window spinning like a carousel on fire. The car was no longer moving forward. It was turning, spiraling, screaming against the road like metal dragged across stone. I couldn't breathe. Then silence. A horrible, pregnant silence. We were stopped. The car sat diagonally across the freeway, half in the fast lane, half in the slow, facing the wrong direction. My brother's knuckles were white on the wheel. The engine coughed but wouldn't move. "No one's coming," I said. Or maybe I just thought it. He muttered something about the tires, about a sensor, about the pressure warning that had come on weeks ago but hadn't seemed urgent. My head throbbed. My heart was pounding in my throat. That's when I saw it, the headlights. Far in the distance. Getting closer. Fast. "Hazards," I said. "Turn on the hazards." He did. Flashed them again and again. Another set of headlights emerged. And another. Like wolves sniffing at the edge of the dark. We were a wreck in waiting, a tragedy half-written. A car stranded across lanes no one was meant to stop in. He honked. Flashed the beams. Waved his hands through the windshield. Nothing. The cars kept coming. One passed close enough that I felt the vibration in my chest. "We have to get out," I said. "No," he said. "Just wait." His voice was brittle, hollowed by adrenaline. "If we get out now, someone hits this car, we're dead." I watched him try again and again to move the car. Gear shift. Pedal. Engine cough. Silence. Over and over. Like praying. Finally, a miracle. The car jerked, groaned, inched forward. We rolled to the side of the road. I don't know how we didn't die. He got out first. Insisted I stay inside. I didn't listen. We climbed over the railing into the cold night air. There were stars, bright, sharp stars that felt too clean, too eternal for the mess we had almost become. Then I heard it. A sound not from the car, but beneath it. Metal dragging. Grinding. He looked under the frame. Plastic torn away, parts bent. Something hanging where it shouldn't. "It's not the tire," he muttered. "It's not even the pressure." We both stared at each other. If it wasn't the tire, what had made us spin? A patrol car pulled up 20 minutes later. The officer crouched beside the car, his flashlight flicking like a nervous eye. "Plastic from your undercarriage caught on something," he said. "Caught on what?" my brother asked. The officer looked up. There was a cone. Middle of the freeway. One of those big ones, but turned on its side. You might have hit it. Lodged it under the car. Why would there be a cone in the middle of the freeway? I asked. He didn't answer. Just cut the plastic loose and stepped back. Lucky you didn't flip. We made it home by 1 a.m. I didn't sleep. Neither did my brother. He kept replaying the moment he saw my eyes snap open. The look of panic. The spin. The sound of my head hitting the door. And I kept thinking about the cone. Not the spin. Not the road. The cone. Because it wasn't supposed to be there. And yet it was. Placed, not fallen. Not knocked over. Placed. Sometimes, I still see it, that orange shape looming out of the dark just before everything went wrong. And I wonder, what if it wasn't meant to make us spin out? What if it was meant to make us stop right there for someone else? It wasn't until I smelled the blood that I knew what I'd driven past. The shape on the shoulder, the one I thought was a dog, had been too still, too angular, as if the bones didn't quite belong where they were. And the car at the T-junction, hazard lights blinking into the dark, hadn't broken down. It had been left there, abandoned, like the body, like the others. I wasn't supposed to be out that late. I'd been seeing a girl, not the kind you bring home to your mother, not even the kind you write about in journals. She was like a fever I didn't want to break. Wild, impulsive, full of ideas and bad intentions. Let's call her Mira. We'd spent the weekend hiking, driving nowhere on purpose, burning time like gas. The plan had been to leave early Sunday afternoon. But you know how that goes. She poured wine I didn't ask for, played music she knew I liked. And I stayed. By the time I left, the sky had already surrendered its last light. The world was that deep shade of navy blue that turns the edges of things vague, like everything's been drawn in charcoal and then smudged. I was tired. Too tired. But not tired enough to sleep at her place, not after the fight we had. Something petty. Something about how she looked at the waiter, or how I didn't look at her. I don't remember now. I only remember the road home. County Road 17 is the kind of stretch that's seen more deer than people. No billboards. No gas stations. Just the dark, and the occasional glint of reflector poles. I'd driven it 100 times, knew the bend before the junction by instinct, knew which stretches dipped just enough to pool rain. That night, I remember feeling uneasy before I even saw it. A kind of static in the air. My hands were tied on the wheel, knuckles aching from tension I didn't understand. That's when I saw the hazard lights. A car parked at an odd angle on the right shoulder. Not pulled off. Not cautious. Just there. And maybe 30 feet ahead of it. Something in the road. At first, I thought it was roadkill. A dog, maybe. Or some large animal hit by a passing truck. I slowed. The shape didn't move. It was folded in on itself in a way that was wrong. Not like something that had fallen, but something that had been thrown. There was no driver in the car. No one standing nearby. Just those amber hazard lights blinking into the night like Morse code. I didn't stop. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be right. About a kilometer ahead was the T-junction, a three-way meeting of concrete, gravel, and fate. You either turn left, toward the suburbs, or right, toward the rural backroads. Straight ahead had once been a small, abandoned farmhouse, a hollow, two-story husk that had been demolished the year before. Now it was just an empty lot. No trees. No fence. Just dead grass and the smell of time. Only it wasn't empty. A car had crashed through the far end of the lot and into the house adjacent to it. A home with yellow siding and a porch swing that now hung lopsided, as if the air itself had recoiled. The car was embedded in the side of the building, like a bullet in plaster. Splintered wood, shattered windows. Smoke still curling from the hood. People stood outside. 4, maybe 5. None of them moved. They weren't helping. They weren't screaming. They were staring, as if trying to understand what they were looking at. So was I. It didn't occur to me to stop. It didn't occur to me to do anything. I just drove. Turned left at the junction. Drove the last mile home. Parked. Sat in the dark. The silence in the car was absolute, the kind of quiet that only exists between impact and realization. I hadn't even noticed I'd turned the radio off. Or maybe I never turned it on. I stared at my hands on the wheel for a long time. The dashboard clock blinked 11:42. I still smelled blood. The news broke the next morning. I'd barely slept, just lay there, staring at the ceiling as if expecting something to crawl across it. My phone buzzed. A friend had sent me the article. 3 teenagers killed in late-night hit and run. They'd just gotten off the city bus. 2 boys, 1 girl. They were walking home from a friend's place. Maybe they were talking about exams, or crushes, or what to eat when they got home. They never made it. The driver had been drinking, kicked out of a nearby bar after an altercation. Angry, slurring, furious at the world. He sped off, hit a car that clipped him sideways, lost control, and veered onto the shoulder. He didn't slow down, didn't swerve. He plowed into them. He fled the scene, ran the light, and, in his confusion or panic or cowardice, drove his car directly into a stranger's home. He survived. Of course he did. He walked away with a fractured wrist and a bloody lip. They said he was young. They said it was an accident. He served 6 years, 2 of them on house arrest. I wonder what the family's got. I called the police the next day. I told them I saw a car, a shape in the road. I didn't know what it was at the time, I said. They said it had been too late anyway. The 3 had died on impact. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't make me feel anything, really, except empty. I went back to the road once. Weeks later. The car was gone, of course. So was the house. It had been condemned and torn down. The lot was just grass and gravel again. But there were scorch marks on the pavement, a faint dark stain near where the hazard lights had blinked. I stood there a long time, watching the road. A pickup passed me without slowing down. I didn't flinch. It's been years now. Sometimes I still wonder, if I had left Myra's house 5 minutes earlier, would I have been the one on the shoulder? Would the kids have made it home? Would their names still be written in articles, etched in granite, whispered in grief? I don't know. All I know is what I saw, what I didn't do. I see their faces now, not clearly, but as impressions. 3 shadows walking together beneath a sodium lamp. One laughing, one checking his phone, one adjusting her backpack. Then the lights, the noise, the silence. People talk about hauntings like they only happen in graveyards or old houses. But I know better. Some ghosts don't rattle chains. They just stand on the shoulder of an empty road, waiting for someone to see them. There are silences that stretch further than any scream. Ours was made of whispers, stalks of corn, and a shared secret none of us ever dared speak again. We left that night alive, but something followed us home. I was 15 this summer. I went to that church retreat. My parents signed me up without asking, as though salvation came standard with fresh air and sleeping bags. It was a week-long trip, out of state, crammed in a van with a handful of kids from church and a pair of adults who seemed more interested in escaping their own responsibilities than managing ours. I remember the van ride, too long, too hot, the air smelling of peanut butter sandwiches and sunscreen. One of the chaperones, a middle-aged man with a lazy eye, made awkward jokes. No one laughed. We weren't there for fun. We were there to work. Or, at least, pretend to. The church we stayed at was enormous. Not gothic or beautiful, just big, with echoing hallways and cheap carpet that made your sneakers squeak. Most of the adults had been billeted off-site with local families. The teens, though, were left to sleep on the floor of the fellowship hall, surrounded by the stained glass eyes of saints we didn't believe in. That's where I met Dylan and Amy. Amy was the kind of girl who made people nervous, not loud, not wild, but too pretty, too confident, too certain. Dylan was quieter, like me. We talked a little, made dumb jokes, swapped snack bars. Normal stuff. I didn't know then that I'd remember the color of their eyes for the rest of my life, and that I'd never speak to them again. The days were filled with structured charity, fixing fences, painting churches, building what we didn't understand for people we didn't know. At night, we'd collapse onto sleeping bags and whisper until someone told us to shut up. It wasn't fun, exactly, but it was bearable. Until the 3rd night. We'd finished early. The adults had gone out, something about dinner with a local deacon. They left an 18-year-old volunteer in charge. He barely looked up from his phone when a group of us said we wanted to explore town. He just said, back before curfew, and waved us off. There were about 8 of us. We walked past shuttered shops and a broken clock tower. A dying town pretending to be alive. We found the crowd in a park at the edge of town, teenagers and 20-somethings, sprawled out on picnic tables and under flickering lamps. There was drinking, laughing, the smell of weed. It felt like we'd stumbled into another world. Some of the older kids in our group blended right in. They peeled off, vanished into the smoke and noise. I stayed on the edge, near the fence, watching. So did Dylan. Amy disappeared somewhere in the center, and when she came back, her lipstick was smudged, and she was holding the hand of a man I didn't recognize. He was older. Too old. Shaggy hair, tanned arms, faded tattoos crawling up his neck. "This is Rick," she said. "He's gonna show me around." She said it like it was nothing. Like this wasn't insane. Like we weren't children. "I'm going with him," she added. "But I don't want to go alone." She looked at me. "Come with." I refused. Of course I refused. But she gave me that look, the kind that said, "If you don't come, I'll go anyway, and you'll be the one who has to live with it." Dylan shrugged and said he'd come too. And so, just like that, the 3 of us were climbing into the bed of a rusted pickup truck, driven by a stranger with calloused hands and bad intentions. There were two of them in the cab, Rick and another man, younger, twitchy, eyes darting like he hadn't slept in days. The truck smelled of gasoline and sweat. There was no music, just the roar of the engine and the rush of wind as we tore down roads that bled from asphalt into gravel. The town lights disappeared, then the trees, then everything. We were in the dark now. The road ended in a clearing, bordered by a wall of corn taller than any of us. A moon hung above like a watching eye, pale and indifferent. Rick turned off the engine. The silence was abrupt, brutal. "Hop out," he said. Amy slid down first, too confidently. I hesitated. Then I heard her voice. "Let's look around," she said. Rick gestured toward the cornfield. "Shortcut to the creek," he muttered. "Nice spot. Quiet." That word quiet twisted something in my gut. I looked at Dylan. He looked back. No words. Just eyes wide, lips tight. Then Rick's friend, the twitchy one, jumped into the bed of the truck with us. "You coming or not?" he asked, grinning. There was something off about his smile. It didn't reach his eyes. It didn't look human. That's when I saw it. The gun, tucked into his waistband. Barely hidden. My breath caught. Amy was near the edge of the corn now, Rick's hand on her arm. She was laughing. A nervous, hollow laugh. Then, a scream. Sharp. Wordless. Amy shoved Rick, hard, and bolted into the corn. The men reacted fast. Too fast. "Go after her," the one near me yelled. I didn't think. I didn't plan. Dylan moved first, shoved the guy hard, knocking him off balance. It bought us 2 seconds. Just enough. We jumped from the truck bed and ran. Not toward the road. Into the corn. Have you ever run through a cornfield at night? It's not like the movies. It's suffocating. Disorienting. Each stalk feels like a hand reaching for your throat. The leaves cut your skin. The ground is uneven, and you can't see anything but shifting shadows. I heard Dylan ahead of me. Then I heard the gunshots. 2. Then silence. I dropped to the ground, heart slamming against my ribs, lungs clawing for air. Where was Dylan? Where was Amy? Where were they? I couldn't tell if they were chasing me, if they knew where I was, if they even cared. Maybe they just wanted one of us. I don't remember how long I ran. Hours, maybe. Eventually, the stalks thinned. A dirt path appeared. Then a fence. Then a house, squat, dark, old. I banged on the door like a man possessed. An old man answered, bleary-eyed, suspicious. "I got lost," I said. "Please." I got lost. I didn't tell him about the men, the gun, the screaming. I just asked for a phone. I called the church. A chaperone came. I don't remember the ride back, just the stillness. And then, to my disbelief, Amy and Dylan were already there. We never spoke about it. Not to each other. Not to the adults. No police were called. We told the others we'd gotten separated, that we took a wrong turn. No one pressed. I think they knew not to. Amy moved 2 states away that year. Dylan changed schools. We never reconnected, never followed each other online. But sometimes, late at night, I see their faces lit by moonlight, carved by fear. Sometimes I hear the stalks whispering, and I wonder, what would have happened if Amy hadn't screamed? What would have happened if we hadn't run? And most of all, who were those men looking for in that field? Because I'm not sure it was us. You don't forget a face like his, not even when you grow up, not even when decades pass. Some faces haunt you not because they're disfigured, but because they look just like anyone else's. Until they start running at you in the dark. I was 11 the summer it happened, and like most kids in Florida, I thought I understood danger. Gators in the lake. Lightning storms that came out of nowhere. Hurricanes with names that lingered longer than they should have. But none of that prepared me for him. It was Chris's idea to go night fishing. He always had the ideas. Sometimes they were stupid, sometimes they were fun, and sometimes, like this one, they were both. "There's catfish in the pond," he said. "Big ones." Tommy was in. He always was. I said yes before I really thought about it. We were bored, it was summer, and we weren't supposed to be out after dark, which made it perfect. The pond was across the street, near the backside of a small apartment complex. We loaded our gear into a squeaky red wagon and slipped through the fence like shadows. There was something about the way the air smelled, still and heavy, like the quiet between sentences. We joked about gators, told stories about what might be in the pond. Someone said it was bottomless. Someone else claimed a kid drowned in it years ago. All of it nonsense, probably. But it passed the time. The fishing itself was nothing special. We got some nibbles, maybe reeled in a few small ones. It didn't matter. It wasn't about the fish. It was about being there. Together. Alone. The walk home was longer. We took the scenic way back, a narrow, overgrown path that cut behind some older houses and ran parallel to a wooden fence. We weren't supposed to be there. That was part of the fun. Chris was pulling the wagon. Tommy was right behind him. I drifted ahead, lost in the rhythm of my own footsteps and the distant hum of cicadas. Then I saw him. At first, it was just a shape, a silhouette, maybe 40 feet behind us. A man, standing perfectly still in the middle of the path. No flashlight, no phone, just there. I stopped walking. "Guys," I said, my voice a little too high. "Someone's back there." Chris and Tommy laughed. They thought I was messing with them. I didn't blame them. I was always the jumpy one. The one who looked over his shoulder twice. "No," I said. "I mean it." They turned around. The man hadn't moved, but now he was closer. Maybe 25 feet. Tommy's face changed first. Chris followed. The laughter vanished. Then the man started running. It wasn't a normal run. It wasn't hurried or panicked. It was purposeful, knees high, arms pumping, the kind of run that eats ground fast. The kind of run that means business. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't making a sound. Just coming. Hard. Fast. We ran. We didn't say anything. We just ran. Slipped through the hole in the fence like rats through a crack, the wagon crashing behind us, gear spilling. None of it mattered. We didn't look back. Didn't need to. You feel when something like that is behind you. There was a house near the corner. Lights off. No cars in the driveway. I don't know why we picked that one. Maybe because it was close. Maybe because it looked safe. We pounded on the door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Finally, it opened. An old man stood there, squinting at us like we were a bad dream. We tried to talk over each other. He held up a hand. "Quiet," he said. "Get behind the car." We ducked behind his rusted sedan in the driveway, hearts rattling in our chests like trapped birds. He walked out into the yard. We couldn't see the man anymore. The one who chased us. But we felt him. Watching. Hiding. Waiting. The old man came back a few minutes later. Calm. Too calm. Said he thought you stole something, he muttered. Didn't seem right to me. Told him to leave. He didn't smile. Didn't ask if we were okay. Just said, "You should go." We thanked him. Ran all the way back to Chris's house. Told his older brother a version of the truth, that we thought we were being followed. He rolled his eyes, told us to get some sleep. We didn't sleep. Not that night. Maybe not for a while after. We never told our parents. You don't when you're that age. You bury it. You laugh it off later. You make it a story. You call it the night we got chased. But it wasn't a story. It was real. I can still see his face. Not clearly, not the details. But the feeling of it. The weight of it. Not angry. Not confused. Just focused. Like a predator. Like someone who'd done this before. Years later, I drove past that pond on a trip home. The fence was gone. A new apartment building stood where we used to fish. I didn't stop. But for a moment, I rolled the window down. And I swear, I heard the creak of a wagon wheel. And a footstep behind me. Just one. You ever feel it? That pressure in the air before something bad happens. Not a sound, not a shadow, just a wrongness. Out there on the water, in the dark, with the shore nothing but a suggestion, I felt it. And I think you did too. The boat was older than we were, and the motor groaned like it resented being woken up at night. But none of that mattered. We were 16, restless, and for once, we had freedom, or something like it. It was Max's uncle's boat. Aluminum, small, loud, and useless in anything resembling real water. But it worked on the inlet, and it was just quiet enough to feel dangerous. That night, it was just Max and me. We told our parents we were camping in his backyard. They believed us, 2 church-going boys with clean sneakers and polite manners. Why wouldn't they? We packed drinks, jerky, a flashlight, a cheap tackle box. Max brought his dad's old revolver, just in case, though we both knew neither of us had any intention or skill to use it. It felt good just to have it. Like maybe it would scare something off if things got weird. The plan was simple. Drift into the inlet, cast lines, drink soda, complain about girls, and stay out until the sun threatened to rise. And for the first hour, that's exactly what we did. The inlet was calm, a lazy stretch of water that fed off a much larger lake nearby. At night, It felt like an ocean. Wide. Endless. The shoreline disappeared in patches of cattails and dense, breathing darkness. We anchored in a cove that curved in like a toothless smile, surrounded by tall grass and trees that bent low over the water. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not just in the way night is quiet, but unnaturally so. No frogs. No crickets. Not even the sound of the water lapping against the hull. Just nothing. I remember Max saying something like, "Feels like we're inside a snow globe someone forgot to shake." I laughed, but I didn't disagree. Around midnight, we saw the light. Faint at first, distant, like a match struck too far away to be real. But it grew. Not a flashlight, not a lantern. It pulsed, like it was breathing. It came from the far side of the inlet, beyond the tree line. Somewhere land met water. Other fishermen? I asked. Max didn't answer. He just stared. No boat, he said after a moment. Look, no reflection. He was right. No silhouette. No metal glint. Just that pulsing light, rising and falling like lungs in the dark. We watched it, and then it disappeared. Max wanted to pull anchor. I agreed. We were uneasy now, not panicked, not afraid, but alert, as if the water had changed, as if something beneath it had noticed us. But when Max reached to start the motor, he froze. There was a sound, a splash, but not the playful kind. Not a fish. It was deliberate, like a body stepping into the water. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Yeah. We turned slowly. On the shore, half obscured by reeds, was a figure. Male. Tall. Just standing there. Watching. I raised the flashlight and flicked it on. He didn't move. He was dressed simply jeans, a dark jacket, no hat. His face was in shadow. He stood with his feet at the water's edge, arms loose at his sides. "Hey," Max called, voice cracking. "You good?" No response. "Need something?" Still nothing. Then he took a step forward, into the water. We both stepped back on instinct, rocking the boat slightly. He stepped again. The water was up to his knees now. Still, no sound. No splash. Just movement. And then a second figure stepped out from the trees. A woman this time. Pale hair. No shoes. They stood side by side at the water's edge, unmoving. And then they both stepped forward. Max grabbed the starter cord and pulled. The motor sputtered. He pulled again. Nothing. Again. Choked. Again. The water rippled behind the boat. Something bumped the hull. Soft. Then harder. I spun around, flashlight slicing the dark. Nothing. Just reeds. The figures were gone. But something was in the water. Not a fish. Not debris. Something larger. Circling. The boat rocked again. Harder this time. We stumbled. The flashlight fell. Darkness swallowed us. Max got the motor going, not clean, not fast, but enough to jerk the boat backward, out of the cove. He turned it, the light finally catching up, and we saw them. 3 now. Standing on the shore, watching. No emotion. No shouting. Just waiting. Like they knew where we'd be. Like they'd done this before. We didn't speak on the way back. Didn't look at each other. Didn't stop. We pulled the boat up on Max's lawn and left it there. Tackle still in the hull, flashlight lost, revolver untouched. We slept in the garage that night, lights on, doors locked. When morning came, we went back to the inlet. It looked the same. Still. Empty. No footprints on the shore. No signs of anyone having been there. We searched anyway. Found nothing. Until we found the flashlight. It had washed up on the bank. The lens was cracked. The bulb still worked. But it was smeared with something brown. Not mud. We told people we saw raccoons. So we got spooked by rustling in the reeds. No one questioned it. But Max stopped going fishing after that. He moved away the following year. Joined the Navy. We talk sometimes, but never about that night. I still live nearby. Sometimes I drive past the inlet. And sometimes, just before dawn, I see a light pulsing between the trees. Faint, rhythmic, like breath. I never stop. Not anymore. But I still wonder. What would have happened if the boat hadn't started? And what waits in that water for the next one who doesn't get away? I've learned that silence can have a weight. In a place where the only sounds should be frogs and wind, silence becomes a warning. And the thing in the woods, whatever it was, made the whole forest hold its breath. It was a late summer evening, and we were supposed to be home already. Dad always pushed the limit when it came to dusk. We'll fish till the frogs start talking, he'd say, which I'd learned meant, until the light's gone, and your mom's going to be furious. That night, he brought me and our old retriever, Buck, out to Kettle Lake, a slow, weedy stretch of water about a half hour out of town, where the trees lean over the shore like they're listening. We parked the truck near the old ranger's path, took the trail down, and cast lines while the sun bled into the water. There was a stillness to it. One of those moments that feel like a postcard even while you're living it. The air warm, but not heavy. Bugs humming in slow motion. Buck lying beside us in the grass. Dad cracked a beer and handed me a soda. We didn't say much. That was the best part of fishing with him. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full. But when the last bit of sunlight slipped behind the trees, the full disappeared. "I'll reel in," I said, not wanting to admit I was starting to feel uneasy. He nodded. "Give it 10. Fish bite best right before dark." But Buck had already gotten up. He stood, ears perked, head cocked slightly to the side. Then he growled. Low, deep, the kind of sound that starts in the belly and means something isn't right. Dad frowned. "Coyote maybe." But I saw the lie on his face. We'd heard coyotes before. Buck didn't growl at coyotes. He barked at them, tail wagging, eager to chase. This was different. This was fear. The trees across the lake shifted. Not the wind. It had gone still, like the whole forest had leaned in to listen. Then we saw it. Not clearly. Not at first. Just movement. A figure between the trees. Too tall. Too thin. Not walking exactly. Drifting. Buck backed up, his tail between his legs. That was the moment it all turned. That's when the fear took shape. Dad stood up, slowly, his hand on the old knife he always carried but never used. "You see it?" I whispered. He didn't answer. I saw his jaw clench. I saw his hand shaking. Then, the figure stepped out from between the trees. And that's when I realized it wasn't a person. Its arms were wrong. Too long. The elbows didn't bend where they should. Its legs moved like a puppet on strings, loose and jerking. It didn't make a sound. No leaves crunched beneath it. No twigs snapped. It walked like the forest let it pass. It stood at the far edge of the lake, just watching. I couldn't see its face. Maybe it didn't have one. Maybe it had too many. Dad knelt beside me. "Listen to me," he said, voice barely a breath. "When I say run, you grab Buck and follow the trail. Don't stop. Don't look back. What about you? I'll be right behind you." He didn't look at me when he said it. He was lying again. The thing tilted its head. Then it began to walk around the lake. Not fast, just deliberate, like it had all the time in the world, like it had done this before. Dad stood. "Run." I grabbed Buck by the collar and bolted, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. The path was barely visible now, eaten by shadow. I didn't look back. I didn't call for Dad. I just ran, and the forest didn't make a sound. It was a miracle I didn't fall. The trail twisted and narrowed, tree roots grabbing at my feet, branches clawing at my face. Buck pulled against me, wanting to sprint, to escape whatever ancient thing was chasing us through the trees. Behind me, there was a sound, not a growl, not a roar. A whisper, dozens of voices, low and overlapping, like wind through teeth. I burst into the clearing where we'd parked. The truck sat crooked, headlights still off. I yanked the door open, shoved Buck inside, and scrambled into the driver's seat. I didn't know how to drive, but fear teaches you fast. I turned the key. The engine coughed. Again. Cough. Again. The forest at my back felt closer. Then the engine roared to life. I peeled out, gravel spraying behind us. And as we left the clearing, I looked in the rearview mirror. I wish I hadn't. The thing stood where the trees ended, just on the edge, just outside the reach of the headlights. Watching. And behind it, other shapes. Dozens. Maybe more. Tall. Thin. Silent. They stood perfectly still, like they were waiting, like they had all the time in the world. I got home somehow. Buck never left my side after that. Slept beside my bed for years. Died old, and I think, still afraid. Dad came home the next morning. Walked through the front door like nothing happened. Didn't say a word about what he saw. Neither did I. But he never went fishing again. Never went near Kettle Lake. Wouldn't even talk about it. Years later, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe to prove it wasn't real. Maybe to make sure it was. The trees hadn't changed. The lake was still there. But the trail? Gone. Swallowed. Like it had never existed. Some nights, when I can't sleep, I remember the silence. The way it made your heart beat louder, just to remind you you were still alive. And I think about the thing in the woods, how it moved, how it watched, and how it never crossed into the clearing. Not because it couldn't, because it didn't need to. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your ears like water, not absence of sound, but the presence of watching. There was no engine, no voices, just the gentle tick of cooling metal and two headlights that refused to blink. The car never moved, but we knew it wasn't going to stay parked forever. My sister Reagan always had a sixth sense. Not the movie kind, not ghosts, not psychics, but a way of sensing when people didn't belong, when something or someone was out of place. It was late spring when it happened, the kind of southern evening where the humidity turns your skin into a film and the crickets chirp like a chorus of rusted metronomes. We'd driven out to the lake on a whim. She had her tackle box in the trunk, and I had nothing better to do. The lake was small, not a public one, a private thing behind our cousin's land, the kind of forgotten water you can only reach if you know which turnoff isn't marked. We liked it that way, quiet, remote, ours. We fished for maybe an hour before it got too dark to see the lines. No bites, no sound but water lapping the shore and the occasional swat of a mosquito. We didn't bring a lantern, didn't need one. The moon was bright enough to cast everything in silver. That's when I noticed it. A car, at the top of the hill, right where the trail meets the road. Just sitting there. It hadn't been there before. We'd have seen it. You can't miss headlights in the woods. But now they were on. Dim, not blinding, but fixed on us. I nudged Reagan. She looked, narrowed her eyes, said nothing, just reeled in her line. There was no sound from the car. No engine, no doors. Just two headlights watching us like eyes through tall grass. "Let's go," she said quietly. We started packing up, but I noticed something as I turned, something that made my stomach drop. There was no license plate, not on the front, not on the back, just a dark, anonymous grill. Reagan didn't run. That wasn't her way. She just moved deliberately, efficiently. Tackle box, folding chairs, cooler. I carried the rods. We didn't speak, didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing. Why is there a car watching us in the middle of nowhere? As we reached the trailhead, the headlights dimmed, not off, just lower, as if the driver was trying to hide. But we saw them. The closer we got, the more we could tell. The windows were tinted, too dark. Even in moonlight, we couldn't see inside. And still, not a sound from it. "Is it running?" I asked. "No," Reagan said. "It's just sitting." She unlocked her car, an old Nissan hatchback with a cracked rear light, and threw everything into the back. I got in the passenger side. She started the engine. We didn't reverse. We didn't move. We just sat there, waiting. The other car didn't move either. We could see it in the mirrors now. Still there. Still dark. Still silent. Then something happened. The driver's side door opened. But no one stepped out. The door just hung there, open, swinging gently, a darker shadow against the night. I stared at it, waiting for movement. A leg, a hand, anything, nothing. Reagan shifted into reverse, and the passenger side door opened too. Not slammed, not thrown, just slowly opened, until both doors were yawning into the night. "I don't like this," I whispered. "I know," she said. Then we saw the movement, not from the car, from the trees. To the right of the vehicle, something low. Crawling. No, walking, but on all fours. Slow. Careful. Too long. Too thin. I blinked. Gone. Reagan didn't say a word. She put the car in drive. And we left. She didn't floor it. That would have made too much noise. She drove like someone sneaking out of a dream. Slow, deliberate, like if we didn't startle the thing, maybe it would let us go. I watched in the mirror. The car never followed. But we didn't feel safe until we reached the highway. We didn't talk about it for a few days. Then Reagan brought it up. "I went back," she said. "During the day." "You what?" "I wanted to see if it was really there. If it was just, some kids messing around. And no tire tracks. No car. Nothing." She paused. But the grass was flattened. Right where it had been. Both sides. Like something, had been crawling. A few weeks later, we heard about the woman who went missing. Her car was found near that same stretch of woods. Locked. No signs of struggle. No footprints. Just the car, doors wide open. And no trace of her. Sometimes, I still see those headlights in my dreams. Still see the doors opening slowly into the dark. Still wonder what was in that car. or near it? And if it had waited just a little longer, would we have ever left the lake at all? It wasn't the fall that haunted me, it was the water. Dark, still, waiting. Not deep enough to drown in, but deep enough to hide something. And as I lay gasping in the muck, the stranger just stood there silent, watching like he'd done it before. It was the first summer I was allowed to fish alone. I'd turned 13 in May, a quiet birthday with a cake that tasted like store-brand vanilla and a half-hearted promise from my dad. You're a man now. Time to earn your stripes. The canal wasn't far from home. A wide, slow-moving stretch of murky water that cut behind the subdivisions and under the old concrete bridge. It was shallow, lined with reeds, and thick with catfish. Every kid within 5 blocks had dropped a line there at some point. Some still did. But that summer, the canal became mine. I'd head there most evenings around 6, my rod slung over one shoulder, tackle box in hand, earbuds jammed in tight. I'd fish until the sky turned purple and the mosquitoes got brave. It was boring, beautiful, perfect, until the night someone pushed me in. It was late July, one of those evenings where the heat doesn't fade, it just hides behind a thicker kind of air. I was in my usual spot beneath the bridge. The underside echoed when cars passed overhead, making the water shimmer like it was breathing. I remember the cast, clean, smooth. I remember the bite, a good one, sudden and heavy. I leaned into it, reeling slow, feeling the delicious resistance. I didn't hear him coming. Not even a crunch of gravel. Not even a cough. Just the feeling of hands on my back. And then water. It wasn't deep, but it was shocking, cold and thick and filled with algae that clung like cobwebs. I went under, came up choking, my knees scraping the silty bottom. I gasped, coughed, spun toward the bank, and he was just standing there. A man, maybe 30, maybe older, thin, pale, wearing a dark hoodie despite the heat. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I'll never forget the way he stood, arms limp, shoulders slightly forward, like he'd been caught mid-thought. He didn't speak, didn't run, just watched. Hey, I shouted, dragging myself up the slippery bank. What the hell? He tilted his head, like a dog, like he didn't understand the question. I fumbled for my tackle box. My rod was floating downstream. He took a step forward. I took 2 steps back. Why'd you do that? He said nothing. He took another step, and that's when I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't want to know if he was following. I ran all the way to the 7-Eleven near my neighborhood, soaking wet, shaking, blood running down my shin from where I'd scraped it on something in the canal. The guy behind the counter looked at me like I was drunk or crazy. I begged him to let me use the bathroom. He gave me a handful of napkins instead. I didn't go back to the canal that night, or the next. My parents didn't believe me. Not really. Probably some homeless guy, my dad said, trying to scare you off. You were probably fishing his spot. I knew that stretch. I knew it. I'd never seen anyone else there. But arguing was useless. I went back 3 days later. The tackle box was gone. So was the rod. But there were footprints in the mud. Bare ones. Narrow. Deep. They started near the water and led into the reeds. Not away from them. I stood there for a long time, just listening. Nothing. Just the wind. I nearly convinced myself I'd imagined it, until I saw the frog, pinned to the underside of the bridge, skewered on a rusted fish hook, still twitching. After that, I stopped fishing at the canal. I stopped going out after sunset. For a while, I stopped sleeping too. But time dulls things. Not the memory, exactly, but the urgency. The fear shifts, becomes a shadow instead of a screen. I didn't see him again. Not for years. I was 19 when the second incident happened. I'd come back home from college for the summer, burned out, broke, and aimless. One of those late-night drives with the windows down led me past the old bridge. The canal hadn't changed. Still dark. Still slow. Still waiting. On impulse, I parked. Climbed down. Just to look. Just to see if it was still there. Still mine. And there, beneath the bridge, was a pile of tackle boxes. 6 of them. Rusty. Mold-covered. One with a name scratched into the side. Lenny. A boy from my neighborhood. Gone since 2012. They said he ran away. I didn't call the cops. I don't know why. Maybe because I wasn't sure they'd believe me. Maybe because part of me didn't want them to. Maybe because some places, some things, don't belong in daylight. They exist in the dark, in whispers, in stories told around campfires and buried before sunrise. But that night, As I turned to leave, I saw him again. Just his reflection. Standing in the water beneath the bridge, even though the path behind me was empty. No ripples. No sound. Just the faint glimmer of a figure. Watching. Some things make noise because they have to. Engines rumble. Tires crunch gravel. Doors creak open. It's just the nature of things. So when something doesn't make noise, when it moves but doesn't announce itself, you start to wonder what else about it isn't right. That truck made no sound. And by the time I realized how wrong that was, I was no longer alone. I used to fish at night to clear my head. I didn't go to bars. Didn't drink. Didn't party. Didn't even have friends I talked to regularly anymore. Not since the breakup. So I fished. Always alone. There's a place just outside town. Not on any public maps. Not stocked or maintained. But a solid little reservoir just past the tree line. A few hundred feet off County Road 84. You wouldn't know it was there unless someone told you. And nobody ever had. I'd found it by accident years ago while hiking. No one else ever came. That's what I liked about it. But that night someone did. It was a Tuesday, late September. One of those nights where the wind picks up just enough to make you feel like something's shifting in the season. I packed light. Just one rod, a small lantern, and a folding stool I hated but couldn't throw out. I parked in my usual spot, off the shoulder of 84, wheels halfway in the grass, and followed the same trail I'd walked dozens of times. The woods were quiet. Not silent, just the usual nighttime hum. Crickets, distant owl, the occasional rustle that might have been a rabbit or a raccoon, or my own nerves. I reached the reservoir a few minutes later. Still, moonlit, empty, exactly how I liked it. I set up near the large flat rock on the eastern edge, the one that jutted over the water just enough to make you feel like you were suspended. I lit my lantern, cast my line. Saturday, and I breathed. It was an hour, maybe more, before I noticed anything. No fish, not even a nibble, but I didn't care. It was about the rhythm, the silence, the weightlessness of doing nothing. And then, a light. Far off, through the trees. A flicker, small, but sharp. Headlights. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe a car turning around on the road. Maybe a truck coming out of one of the logging paths further north. But the light didn't move. Then it vanished. Then reappeared, closer. Still no sound. No rumble of an engine. No crunch of tires over leaves. Nothing. Just light. I stood, lantern off. Listened. Still silence. I told myself it was nothing. Just someone who took a wrong turn. Maybe a ranger doing rounds. Maybe just headlights bouncing in a weird way. I sat down again. Tried to settle. I never heard it arrive. The truck was parked at the trailhead when I returned to my car. That was the first real fear. Because I never heard it drive up. Never heard the trail crunch under tires. Never saw the lights swing across the trees. And yet there it was. A large black pickup. The kind you see in horror movies. Always too clean or too dirty. Its windows were tinted. Engine off. And it faced my car directly. Like it had been waiting. I froze behind a tree. 20 yards off. Watching. No movement inside. I didn't have my phone. Left it in the car. No weapon. Just a rod and a tackle box full of hooks and sinkers. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Still, the truck didn't move. Then the driver's side door opened. I didn't see the person at first. Just a silhouette. Tall, thin, stepping out like they didn't care who was watching. But they didn't look around. They walked to the back of the truck, opened the tailgate, and stood there, back to me, hands inside the bed of the truck, doing something I couldn't see. Then, they stopped, and turned. Not slowly, not suddenly, just completely, facing the woods, facing me. I ducked behind the tree, held my breath. Did they see me? No sound. I peeked out. They were gone. Not behind the truck. Not beside it. Gone. The forest was silent again, but not peaceful. Tense. Coiled. Like it was holding its breath. Then, a footstep behind me. I turned, fast. Faster than I thought I could move, rod in hand like a spear. No one. Just woods. Shadows. A wind that hadn't been there before. And somewhere in that wind, something whispering. Not words. Not quite. Just the idea of words. I bolted. Didn't check for footing. Didn't care about noise. Branches whipped at my face as I sprinted toward the road. My car. My only way out. The truck was still there. Doors closed. Lights off. Empty. I hit the driver's side door hard. Yanked it open. jammed the key in the ignition with shaking hands. That's when the passenger door opened. I didn't open it. No one touched it. But it opened, slowly, smoothly, and something climbed in. I didn't see it. Not fully, but I felt the weight in the seat next to me. Heard the slow, ragged inhale. Felt the temperature drop like I was sitting in a meat locker. I didn't look. I couldn't. I slammed the car into gear and peeled out, tires shrieking across gravel. I drove straight through a ditch, up onto the road, engine howling like a wounded animal. The passenger door slammed shut as I turned onto the highway. And then nothing. When I finally pulled into a gas station 30 miles away, the passenger seat was empty. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. Just a faint smear across the inside of the window. Like something greasy had leaned close. And watched me. I never went back to that reservoir. Didn't tell the cops. Didn't even tell my ex. But sometimes, I drive down 84. Just to check. And sometimes, in the distance, I see a black pickup. Parked. Silent. Waiting. Just where the woods begin. And if I stare long enough. Sometimes I think I see the door begin to open. It wasn't the knock that scared me, it was the silence afterward. The way it hung in the air, thick and unnatural, like sound itself had been drained from the room. And then came the voice, low, calm, wrong, drifting through my front door like it already knew my name. I'd been living alone for about 3 months. First time in my life. No roommates, no family, no girlfriend to argue over what brand of cereal belonged in the cupboard. Just me, a one-bedroom rental on the edge of town, and a shotgun I inherited from my grandfather that I swore I'd never need. The neighborhood was quiet, unremarkable. Mostly retired couples and young families. It had a sameness to it. Boxy houses, vinyl siding, lawns mowed to identical lengths. Nothing bad ever happened there. Nothing at all ever happened there. Until it did. The week leading up to that night had been strange. Little things at first. Sounds I couldn't place. Footsteps on the porch when no one was there. My motion sensor light flickering on at odd hours, triggered by nothing. I chalked it up to wind, animals, maybe the occasional raccoon looking for trash. Then there were the knocks. Soft, deliberate. Always at night. Always after 2 a.m. Just one. Sometimes two. I'd sit up in bed, heart thumping, listening. But when I checked the peephole, the porch would be empty. 3 nights in a row, this happened. By the 4th, I started keeping the shotgun by the bed. I didn't really think I'd need it. I was wrong. It was 2:17 a.m. when the knock came. I remember the exact time because I just turned over to check my phone after waking from a dream I couldn't quite remember. Something about being buried, or drowned, or both. Then the knock. Not loud, but sharp. Not hesitant, but deliberate. One knock, then silence. I sat up in bed, every hair on my arm standing on end. This time, I didn't wait. I slid out of bed, grabbed the shotgun, and padded down the hall barefoot, stepping around the floorboards I knew creaked. The front door was dark, the porch light off. I reached for the switch and stopped. Something told me not to turn it on. I looked through the peephole, and someone was standing there. It was a man, tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. I couldn't make out his face. The angle of the porch light from the street cast his features in shadow. He wasn't moving, just standing, arms at his sides, waiting. I didn't speak. Neither did he. For almost a full minute, we stayed like that. Me behind the door, heart pounding. Him on the other side, perfectly still. Then, slowly, he leaned in until his face was inches from the peephole, and smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It didn't reach his eyes. It didn't belong on a person. It was too wide, too deliberate. Like a photograph someone had folded wrong and tried to smooth out. And then he spoke. His voice was soft, like he was talking to someone already asleep. "Come on," he whispered. "Just open it. You know who I am." I backed away from the door. He tapped it gently with one knuckle. Tap, tap, tap. "Let me in," he said. "You're awake anyway." My hands were shaking. I raised the shotgun, pointing it at the door like it would matter. I didn't say a word. Then a scratching. Not on the door, but above it. On the frame. Like something trying to peel away the wood. I took another step back. Then 2. I was halfway down the hallway when the scratching stopped. And the knock came again. Just once. And then silence. I waited for what felt like an hour. Eventually, I crept back to the door. Looked through the peephole. He was gone. I checked the porch, the lawn, the street. Empty. I locked the door again, triple-checked it, pulled the dresser in front of it, just in case. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went outside. I needed to see that he wasn't real. I needed to prove to myself that it had all been some stress-induced nightmare. But the marks were there. On the door frame. Deep gouges in the wood. 5 of them. Like fingers. Like claws. I filed a report. The cop who showed up looked half asleep. Didn't see anything suspicious on the street camera footage, but admitted there was a blind spot directly in front of my house. He suggested it might have been a prank. Kids. A transient. Someone high. He didn't see the smile. He didn't hear the voice. I changed my locks. Bought security cameras. Floodlights. Motion sensors. For weeks, nothing happened. Until the night I got the letter. No return address. Just a plain white envelope, slid under my door while I was in the shower. Inside, a single piece of paper. Typed, "No need to knock next time. You already left it unlocked once." I checked the cameras. Nothing. Not a single frame. Not even the moment the envelope appeared. I moved out 2 days later. Didn't tell anyone why. Didn't take everything with me. Didn't care. Some nights, in my new apartment, I still wake at 2:17. No knock. Not yet. But sometimes, I swear I hear footsteps on the carpet. And once, just once. I found the porch light unscrewed. From the inside. There's something deeply wrong about hearing real fear in a friend's voice through a headset. Not the fake kind you shout during a jump scare, but the trembling, barely audible kind, where every breath feels like it might be your last. I heard it that night, and I couldn't do a damn thing. I remember every detail about that night. I was playing Fortnite with Jordan, as we had nearly every evening for the past few months. It was kind of our ritual, especially on the nights when neither of us could sleep. I'd be in my bedroom with the lights off, the only illumination coming from the dull blue glow of my monitor, headset snug against my ears, controller in hand. Jordan was across town, in his bedroom, same setup. We were a team. We weren't great, but we were good enough to keep playing. It wasn't about winning anyway. It was about talking, about forgetting things. School, parents, relationships, or the lack thereof. That night, everything was fine. Normal. We were queuing into our 3rd match, joking about the game's latest update, debating whether shotguns had been nerfed. I remember it was close to 11:30 p.m., and I had just opened a chest near Slurpy Swamp when Jordan stopped talking. Not in a distracted way. Not in a he's texting someone way. He went dead quiet. I figured it was a lag spike. Then I heard him whisper, "Dude, there's someone in my house." At first, I thought he was messing with me. He did that sometimes, added drama, turned mundane stuff into mini horror shows for laughs. He was good at storytelling, and I fell for it more than I care to admit. But not this time. There was a quiver in his voice that was unmistakable. I stopped moving in-game, my character just standing there in the open. "What?" I said, half laughing. "Dude, don't mess with me." "I'm not," he whispered. "I heard the front door open like 5 minutes ago. I thought it was my mom getting home late, but I just heard footsteps in the hall. Slow ones." My blood ran cold. Jordan lived alone with his mom. His dad had been out of the picture for years, and his mom worked nights as a nurse. They lived in a quiet, older neighborhood where streetlights flickered and the wind always seemed to carry someone else's conversation. We joked before about how horror movies always happened in places like his. Now, it didn't feel so funny. "What do I do?" he whispered. I sat there, paralyzed. "Do you have anything to defend yourself?" I asked. "My bad. In the closet. But that's across the room. If I move, he'll hear me." "You sure it's not your mom?" "No. She always calls out when she comes home. Always." And I heard the creak on the second stair. You can't step there without it making a sound. I stared at the screen. My character got sniped. I didn't care. "Where are you right now?" "In my room. Door closed. Lights off." "Can you lock the door?" "No lock." I could hear his breathing now. Fast. Shallow. Then I heard it too, through his headset mic. A creak. Loud and clear. Much closer. He didn't speak again for a long time. I was about to say something when I heard another sound. His closet door opening. The faint scrape of the hinges. Then his voice, impossibly quiet. "I'm going in the closet. Don't say anything." I muted my mic automatically, as if doing so would make a difference. I sat in the dark, heart pounding, hands ice cold. Then I heard it, his room door opening. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Rubber soles on old hardwood. And breathing. Not his. Someone else's. A low, steady exhale. Wet, heavy. I clamped a hand over my mouth. He hadn't been lying. Then came the whisper. But not from Jordan. From the other person. He's not here, the voice said. It was wrong. Not deep, not threatening, but soft, feminine. Sing-song. Like someone reciting a line from a lullaby they didn't understand. He's not here, it said again. Where did he go? Then silence. Nothing. Not even Jordan's breathing. The mic went dead. I didn't know what to do. Call him? No. If he was hiding, his phone might make a sound. Text? Too risky. Call the cops? But what would I say? That I'd heard strange noises through a gaming headset? I decided to wait. Just a minute. 2. Then I'd decide. That's when I heard the scream. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even long. But it was raw. Real. Cut off mid-breath. Followed by the sound of something falling. A crash. Then scrambling. Then nothing. I unmuted my mic. Jordan? Jordan. No response. Say something, man. Please. Nothing. Then the mic picked up again. Static. Faint shuffling. And then. Found you. I called 911. Told them everything I could, gave them Jordan's address, explained what I'd heard. They didn't say much. Just that someone would be sent. I waited. Minutes felt like hours. Then my phone rang. It was Jordan. I picked up so fast I nearly dropped it. Hello? Are you okay? His voice came through. Rough. Tired. I'm okay, he said. It's over. What the hell happened? Who was that? They got him, he said. Police showed up just in time. Guy had a knife. Was going room to room. Who was he? Jordan paused. I don't know. He didn't take anything. Didn't say anything except that one line. What line? He repeated it. Found you. Later, the cops told him the man had likely been squatting in a vacant house nearby. No ID. No name. Nothing. They said he might have been looking for a place to crash. Maybe he was high. Maybe unstable. But that didn't explain how he got in without breaking anything. Didn't explain how he moved so quietly. Didn't explain why, when they searched him, he had Jordan's old house key in his pocket. A key he lost 2 years earlier. One he never told anyone about. Jordan moved not long after that. We still talk. Still game. But he always makes sure his room door is locked. Always checks the mic before we play. And neither of us ever mutes. There's a special kind of fear that only comes when you realize someone's watching you from the dark. Not someone you know, not someone with a reason, just a shape where no shape should be, a breath where no breath belongs. And when it becomes clear they're not watching your house, they're watching you, it's already too late. It started with the fence. A short, warped thing that separated our property from the neighbor's overgrown lot. It had always been more decoration than protection, a barely waist-high barrier that did little more than mark the edge of responsibility. But lately, I'd noticed things on the other side. Not things I could name. Just impressions. Movements that didn't match the wind. Shadows that didn't belong to trees. I didn't mention it at first. I was 16, home alone most nights while my mom worked third shift at the nursing home. I had school, sure, but my grades were fine and she trusted me. So did the neighbors. Or they would have, if they ever looked outside. The first real sign came on a Wednesday. I was playing a horror game on the couch, headphones in, controller sweaty in my hands. The house was dark except for the TV's flickering light. That was part of the fun. Total immersion, scaring myself silly, then laughing at it when it was over. But that night, I wasn't laughing. Because the game's ambient sound, the crunch of leaves, the low rustling of wind through bushes, didn't stop when I paused. And when I took my headphones off, it was still there. Right outside the window. I crept to the glass. There was movement. Slow, deliberate, near the fence. The porch light was off, but the moon was high, casting long silver lines through the yard. That's when I saw him. A man. Standing perfectly still. Not near the fence. In it. Like he'd stepped halfway over. 1 foot in my yard. 1 foot in the neighbor's. He wasn't moving. He wasn't looking around. He was looking directly at me. I dropped to the floor before he could see more. Heart pounding, I crawled back toward the hallway, every instinct screaming at me to lock the door, to turn off every light. But I didn't. I went back to the couch, slowly stood, and peeked out again. He was gone. No sound. No sign. No retreating footsteps. Just gone. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of the light. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe my imagination. Until the next night. This time, it wasn't one man. It was three, all standing near the edge of the yard. Not lined up, positioned. One at the corner near the tool shed, one behind the dying orange tree, and one crouched, just visible behind the mailbox. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Just watched. I called my mom. She didn't answer. Left a voicemail I hope didn't make me sound crazy. Then I did what any teenager does when they're terrified and alone. I called my best friend. Jesse lived 2 blocks away and had an older brother who knew how to fight. That was all I needed to feel like help was possible. "Stay put," he said. "I'll be there in 5. I watched the figures the whole time. They never moved. Not even when Jesse's headlights rolled up the street. Not even when he pulled into the driveway. But when I ran outside and looked back, they were gone. Just like that. No footsteps. No rustling. Nothing. We walked the perimeter with a flashlight. Jesse held a baseball bat. I had a steak knife. It felt stupid, but the fear didn't. Not when we found the footprints. Dozens of them. Deep, muddy, pressed into the grass in staggered circles, like someone had been walking around the house for hours. Not pacing. Studying. We went back inside. Jesse stayed over that night. Slept on the couch with the bat in hand. I didn't sleep. I sat in my room with the light off, peeking out the blinds until the sun came up. But they didn't come back. Not that night. Not the next. I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. It was Friday night when the power went out. No storm. No flicker. Just gone. 1 second I was in the kitchen, microwave humming. The next, silence. Darkness. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it. Didn't answer. It buzzed again. Same number. Then again. For times. No voicemails. No texts. Just the buzzing. And then a knock. Not at the front door. Not the back. The window. Right next to where I stood. I didn't look. I couldn't look. Instead, I ducked beneath the counter, heart slamming so hard I thought I'd be sick. Then another knock. A little harder. A little lower. Like a fist was testing the glass. Then silence. Then a whisper, so close I thought it was inside. "Let us in." I called 911. Tried to. Phone died as soon as I unlocked it. Dead. Even though it was at 78% 20 minutes ago. I didn't have time to think about it. Because now, I could hear footsteps. Inside. Not fast. Measured. Like someone walking in a museum. Then another knock. On my bedroom door. I ran to my mom's room. Locked the door. Broke the key off in the lock from the inside. Found the shotgun she kept in the closet, the one I wasn't supposed to touch. I sat with my back to the wall, eyes on the door, and waited. I don't remember falling asleep. Just remember the sound of birds waking me, morning light trickling through the blinds, and the door untouched. No scratches, no damage. But the house was wrong. Windows unlocked that I never touched. Cabinets open. Drawers emptied. Like someone had looked for something. Or decided there was nothing to find. When Mom came home that night, I didn't tell her everything. Just enough to get her to believe something happened. We installed cameras. Extra locks. Motion lights. For weeks, nothing happened. Then one morning, we checked the footage. At 2:34 a.m., the cameras glitched. For 8 seconds. When they came back, there was a single frame. A man, standing in the backyard, face pale, eyes blacked out by the porch light's glare, and across his shirt, written in dirt or blood or something else. "We see you." We moved 3 weeks later. Didn't sell the house. Just left it. Still sits empty. Still has the camera system, the locks, the lights. But sometimes, late at night, I check the feed remotely. And sometimes, the motion alert comes from inside. We always think monsters look like monsters, deformed, grotesque, loud. But the most dangerous ones have front lawns, warm smiles, and a way of blending in so perfectly, you forget to keep your doors locked. Until you realize they've been watching you through the walls. It was the summer before my senior year, and everything felt like it was about to begin. I just started dating Sam, the kind of relationship that made every night feel like a movie. We snuck around, made plans, held hands like it was still a secret from the world. It was sweet, stupid, perfect. That night, my parents had gone out for their anniversary. Dinner, a hotel in the city. I was left alone in the house for the first time, and with little hesitation, I invited Sam over. He showed up just after dusk, breathless from his bike ride, still smelling faintly of cheap cologne and sunscreen. I remember the way he smiled when I opened the door, the way his fingers lingered when I handed him a soda, the way we made fun of the dumb movie playing in the background as we curled into each other on the living room couch. It was all so normal, so alive, until the man across the street knocked on our window. We both jumped. It wasn't a loud knock, just 3 sharp taps. But the sound was wrong, too precise, too familiar. The man stood on our porch, just beyond the frame of the window. The porch light illuminated the shape of him, but not his face. He was older, late 40s, maybe 50s, with thick gray hair and a faded blue windbreaker zipped all the way up to his neck. I recognized him, of course. He lived directly across the street in the tan house with the overgrown lawn. His name was Richard, or maybe Raymond. Something with an R. We'd never talked. He waved. Not a normal wave. A slow one. Too slow. Do you know him? Sam asked. Sort of, I said. He lives over there. What does he want? I didn't know. But he didn't knock again. Just stood there, staring, smiling. Eventually, I opened the door, just a crack. Hi, I said, cautiously. His smile widened. Evening, he said. Didn't mean to startle you. I forced a smile in return. It's okay. Can I help you with something? He looked past me into the house. Saw the 2 drinks. The movie's still playing. Just noticed your lights were on, he said. Wanted to make sure everything was all right. I blinked. We're fine, I said. My parents are out. Just watching a movie. He nodded, still smiling. Still not blinking. Lovely night, he said. And then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Not back across the street. Around the side of my house. Out of view. I closed the door, locked it, and bolted it before I said a word. Sam was already standing. That was weird, he said. I nodded. My skin felt too tight. My mouth dry. We turned off the movie. Killed the lights. Peered through the curtains. No sign of him. Nothing on the street. Just the yellow glow of street lamps and the quiet hum of sprinklers. Sam walked me through it. Tried to calm me down. Maybe he's just lonely. Maybe he thought something was wrong. Maybe. Then the back door creaked. We both froze. It wasn't the wind. It was the screen door. Opening. Then closing. A pause. Then the faintest tap of a shoe on tile. From the kitchen. Sam grabbed the fire poker from beside the fireplace. I picked up the baseball bat my dad kept in the umbrella stand by the door. We moved down the hall together, slow, careful, terrified. The kitchen was empty. The door was locked. But the curtain over the sink window was fluttering, like someone had just been there. We didn't sleep that night. Sam stayed until dawn, refusing to leave me alone. We checked every window, every lock, every closet. Nothing. But the fear didn't leave. It only grew. Over the next week, things started going missing. Small things, at first. A pair of socks. The TV remote. One of my mom's old framed photos from the bookshelf. We thought we were being forgetful, until Sam found the knife. We were sitting in my room, lights on, music low, just talking. He bent down to grab his charger from his bag and froze. What the hell? He whispered. He held it up. A kitchen knife. Ours. From our set. The tip dulled. The handle smeared with something dark, not blood, but oil, maybe dirt. We hadn't brought it upstairs. We never brought knives upstairs. I told my parents. They laughed it off. It's probably just you being jumpy, my dad said. You left the door unlocked one night and spooked yourself. But I started locking everything. Windows, doors, even the attic hatch. And still, I'd wake in the middle of the night to strange sounds. Whispers, breathing, scratching. One night, after my parents had gone to bed, I stepped outside to get some air. The breeze was light, the moon high. I stood in the driveway, staring across the street. At his house. Every window was dark, except one. His bedroom, I think. And in the window, not in the light, but in the reflection, I saw movement. A shape. Inside my house. Upstairs. In my room. I ran back inside. Up the stairs. My door was open. My bed was untouched. But on my pillow, something was resting. The photo of me and Sam. The one I kept in my wallet. The one that had gone missing days before. And next to it, a note. Typed. No need to sneak around. I already know what you are. We moved out 2 weeks later. No explanation. No dramatic confrontation. My parents just decided it was time. We didn't sell the house. Just left it. Last I checked, it's still empty. The man across the street still lives there. Lawn mowed now. Windows clean. Porch light always on. But sometimes, Sam texts me late at night. Says he thought he saw someone outside his apartment. Not doing anything. Just standing. Watching. Smiling. And each time, I ask the same thing. Was he wearing the blue windbreaker? You expect certain dangers when you're alone. Dark streets, strange men, empty parking lots. But inside a movie theater, surrounded by people, laughter, and overpriced popcorn, you don't expect the danger to follow you into the one place you're supposed to be safe, a locked bathroom stall. It was summer when it happened, the kind of sticky July heat that makes theaters the perfect refuge. My friend Kayla and I had gone to a matinee of some forgettable action flick, more for the AC and snacks than the actual movie. We were 15, independent enough to go alone, but still young enough to text our parents updates every 30 minutes. The theater was nearly empty. Just a few scattered couples, a pair of teenage boys in the back row, and a man sitting alone near the center aisle. He looked older, maybe 30 or 40, in that ambiguous way where the light makes it hard to tell. Wore a faded hoodie and cargo pants, despite the heat outside. Seemed harmless. Or rather, invisible, the way solitary moviegoers often are. He never looked at us. Or maybe he did, but we didn't notice. Not then. Halfway through the movie, I had to pee. Kayla offered to come with the unspoken rule of girlhood, and we slipped out of the theater, whispering as we made our way to the restroom. It was one of those older theaters. Narrow halls, peeling posters, a weird carpet that always looked damp no matter how often they cleaned it. The women's bathroom was empty, dimly lit. One of the 3 stalls had an out-of-order sign on it, hanging crookedly. I took the far stall. Kayla took the one beside it. We kept chatting through the walls about the movie, about the guy 2 rows down who kept clearing his throat like he had something to say. Then the door opened. I didn't think much of it at first. Could have been anyone. Footsteps. Slow. Soft. But not heel-heavy like most women's steps. These were flat. Measured. Then the lock clicked on the out-of-order stall. The one with the sign. Kayla went silent. I paused. We waited. Then, from that stall, a sound. Not a cough. Not a sniff. Just breathing. Deep. Controlled. Too loud to be normal. Too intentional. I flushed, unlocked the stall, stepped out, and froze. Because the feet under that door weren't facing the toilet. They were facing out. Toward us. Kayla came out seconds later. We didn't speak. Didn't wash our hands. Just walked to the door. Tried to laugh it off as we exited into the hall, the sound bouncing oddly off the tile behind us. Then we heard the stall door open. We turned, and a man stepped out of the women's bathroom. The same one from the theater. Same hoodie. Same pants. He didn't run. Didn't look ashamed. Just walked past us like we didn't exist. Kayla stared after him. I think he followed us in, she whispered. I didn't want to believe it. I still don't, but I do. We went back into the theater, shaken. Sat down, eyes wide, skin buzzing. He was gone. His seat was empty. We told ourselves maybe we were wrong. Maybe we'd imagined it. Maybe it was a weird coincidence. Until we left the movie. The parking lot was nearly empty by then. Just a few cars scattered across the asphalt like forgotten toys. The sun had dropped below the treetops, and shadows stretched long across the pavement. As we reached my mom's car, Kayla stopped walking. Her face had gone pale. I followed her gaze, and there he was, across the lot, leaning against a lamppost, staring, smiling. We got into the car and locked the doors. I texted my mom, hurry. Then again, there's a creep in the parking lot. No reply. She was late. 10 minutes, then 15. Kayla refused to let me get out and look. And then he started walking. Slow, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world. Straight toward us. Kayla fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. I slid the keys into the ignition, ready to drive away, even though I wasn't supposed to. Even though I'd only practiced twice in empty lots. He was 10 feet away, then 5. I started the car, and that's when he stopped. Just stood there, smiling. His hand reached out and rested lightly on the hood of the car. We couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then he tapped the hood twice, like knocking on a door, and turned away. The police showed up 10 minutes later. He was long gone. We gave a description, showed the security footage. He was there, all right, followed us into the theater, into the restroom, watched us leave. They never found him. No name, no record, no reason. Just a man who vanished as easily as he appeared. Months later, Kayla and I went to another movie. Different theater. Bigger crowd. Daylight this time. But I still checked every stall before sitting down. Still watched for feet facing the wrong direction. And sometimes, when I'm alone in a public restroom, I still think of the way he breathed. Slow. Steady. Like he knew I was listening. And didn't care. Because the door may have been locked. But he was already inside. There's something unshakably wrong about the sound of gunfire when you know you're supposed to be safe. When the floor vibrates, when people scream, and you can't tell if it's part of the movie or something tearing your world apart. That's when the lights go out inside you, and you stop feeling human. That night, we didn't leave the theater the same people who walked in. I was 17 when it happened. It was my little sister's birthday. Taylor had just turned 13, barely a teenager, but already obsessed with adult things. Horror movies, loud music, nail polish with names like Nightshade and Venom Kiss. She didn't ask for much that year. Just a movie night. Just me. It had been our thing since we were kids, sneaking candy into matinees, rating the trailers, whispering jokes until the opening credits made us go quiet. We picked a new release, an action film we didn't care much about, but it had air conditioning and a late show. That was enough. The theater was packed. Late showings in midsummer always were. It was 11:40 p.m. when we took our seats in screen 9, halfway up the middle row. There were teenagers on dates, men in baseball caps, moms with their kids. A normal night. A safe night. Until it wasn't. It started with the exit door. The one near the bottom corner of the screen. The one no one ever used unless they were sneaking in or the projector died. I didn't see it open, but I felt the air shift. That weird pressure change that comes when someone enters a sealed space. Like the room took a breath. Then a shadow moved along the bottom of the screen. And then, the first bang. For a split second, we thought it was part of the film. An explosion, maybe. A car backfiring. But the screen froze. The audio stopped. And the lights didn't come up. People screamed. Another shot. Then another. The man in front of me dropped. Slumped forward in his seat. Then someone fell behind us. I don't remember grabbing Taylor's hand. I just remember holding her and hitting the floor. We crawled. I could feel the popcorn kernels grinding into my knees, the stick of soda on my palms. Could hear crying. Shouting. More gunshots. And someone, somewhere, calling out a name that wasn't answered. The lights finally came on, but they didn't help. They made it worse. They showed everything. People curled beneath seats, trembling. Others frozen, hands over their heads, not blinking. A woman near the aisle tried to run and was pulled back down by her partner. A man clutched his leg, red blooming between his fingers. But I didn't look at the screen. I looked for the shooter. And there he was, near the emergency exit. Calm. Focused. Still holding the gun. He didn't look angry. He looked bored. Like he was already thinking about where to go next. Security didn't come. Not right away. I later learned that it took 6 minutes for the first responders to arrive. 6 minutes is an eternity when you're waiting for death. We crawled, inch by inch, toward the side exit. My arms around Taylor like a shield, whispering that everything was going to be okay. A lie I needed her to believe. Then someone opened the wrong door. And the alarm blared. And he turned. I don't know how close the bullet came, but I remember the sound of it. Like the air itself tearing open. We made it through the door, out into the hallway, which was worse. People were running in every direction. Employees shouting. More screams from other theaters, even though the shooter was only in ours. The panic had become contagious. I heard someone yell about a second gunman. There wasn't one. But in that moment, no one knew anything. No one felt real. We hid in the women's bathroom. Taylor locked the stall and climbed up onto the toilet so no one would see her feet. I curled up beside her, phone in hand, trying to call 911. No signal. I texted my mom. Didn't know what to say. Finally settled on. Something's wrong. I have Taylor. We're hiding. I love you. She didn't answer until the next day. When the police came, they came loud. Shouting. Guns drawn. Flashlights stabbing into every corner. They cleared the hallway first. Then the bathrooms. We were escorted out, hands in the air. Taylor couldn't stop shaking. Neither could I. Outside, the parking lot was chaos. People crying, sirens wailing, parents sprinting toward the yellow tape with fear etched into every wrinkle of their faces. My mom found us. I've never seen her run that fast. Or cry that hard. She wouldn't let go of us for hours. 12 people were injured. 4 died. The man was arrested in the projection booth, trying to jam the door shut from the inside. Said he wanted to be remembered. Said he didn't feel anything while doing it. Just wanted to know what it felt like. I never looked at his face. Never said his name. Because that's what he wanted. Taylor didn't speak for 3 days. Then, one morning, she sat beside me at the kitchen table and whispered, "Did you see the look in his eyes?" I nodded, because I had, and I knew I'd never forget it. We don't go to movie theaters anymore. We tried, once. Stood in the lobby, popcorn in hand, staring at the rows of glowing posters and cardboard cutouts. Then someone dropped a soda. It hit the floor with a bang, and Taylor screamed. Everyone turned. She ran out. I followed. We never tried again. Now, when I watch movies, I keep the lights on, and I always sit with my back to the wall. And sometimes, in the quiet parts between scenes, I hear it, the creak of a side door, the shift of air, the click of a trigger. It's never real, but it was once. And that's enough, because we lived. But not everyone did. And the man who opened that door didn't just end lives that night. He changed what it means to feel safe, even in the dark, even at the movies, even in screen night. It's strange how safety can evaporate in seconds. One moment, we were laughing about snacks and movie trailers. The next, we were pressed against a brick wall, our backs cold with fear, a knife less than an arm's length away. And the worst part? The people who should have protected us ran. It was a Friday night, the start of summer vacation. Me, Lexi, and our boyfriends, Tyler and Shane, were going to see the new horror movie at the local megaplex. The theater was part of one of those all-in-one plaza setups, where the food court, the theater, and a strip of neon-lit shops hugged the edge of a huge parking lot like a crooked smile. The place was a teenage hangout cliché, buzzing with chatter, laughter, skateboards clacking against pavement, the warm scent of fried food hanging heavy in the air. We were buzzing too, excited, over-caffeinated, overdressed for a cheap slasher flick. Lexi wore red lipstick she wasn't allowed to wear at home. I had on my favorite jean jacket. Tyler and Shane were in their usual weekend uniforms. Hoodies, baseball caps, the casual cockiness of 17-year-olds pretending to be older. We didn't care about the movie. We just wanted the night. After the film, we lingered. It wasn't even that late, maybe 10:30, but the lobby had mostly cleared. Employees were already stacking cleaning carts and dragging trash bags past the arcade machines. We wandered outside, our laughter echoing off the building as we made our way toward the back lot. That's when Lexi had the bright idea. Let's take the shortcut. There was a narrow alley behind the theater that led directly to the back lot. It cut 10 minutes off the walk and spat us out right by the taco spot, our unofficial post-movie tradition. Tyler and Shane exchanged glances, shrugged. "Sure," Shane said. "Unless you're scared." He said it to me, smirking. I rolled my eyes and stepped into the alley first. I should have trusted my hesitation. The alley was narrower than I remembered. The concrete walls on either side were smeared with graffiti and old chewing gum, and the yellow security light above the emergency exit was flickering like a bad omen. Lexi and I walked side by side, our footsteps bouncing back at us in stereo. Tyler and Shane trailed behind, tossing pieces of popcorn at each other, laughing like idiots. Then we heard the footsteps, coming from the other end. Quick, heavy, deliberate. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone else cutting through. A late-night employee. Another group like ours. But the laughter behind us stopped, and when I glanced over my shoulder, I saw Tyler and Shane frozen. Then I looked forward again. He was already there. A man. Late 20s, maybe 30s. Hooded sweatshirt. Long jeans, too long. Something sharp glinting in his hand. Not a gun. A knife, small, but curved. He didn't speak. Just stepped forward. Fast. Lexi gasped. I grabbed her hand without thinking. "Wallets," the man finally said. His voice was flat. Not angry. Not panicked. Just decided. Now. Tyler moved first. He reached into his pocket. But it wasn't for his wallet. It was for his phone. The man saw. And lunged. The knife caught Tyler in the shoulder. Not deep. Not fatal. But enough to make him scream and drop the phone. He stumbled backward into Shane, who cursed loudly and shoved Tyler away. Then Shane ran. Just turned and ran back down the alley. Tyler followed, bleeding, stumbling, not even looking back. And Lexi and I were alone. The man didn't chase them. He turned to us, still silent, still holding the knife, still stepping forward. Lexi backed into the wall. I followed. Both of us pressed so tight against the bricks I thought we might disappear into them. I fumbled with my purse, hand shaking, trying to yank out my wallet. "Here," I said, breathless. "Just take it." He didn't take it. He stared. At Lexi. Then at me. Then he smiled. It was a terrible smile. Too small. Too calm. Like he was enjoying how scared we were, not in a rush, not looking for valuables, just savoring the moment. Lexi whimpered. "Please," she whispered. And I did something I still don't understand. I stepped forward. I don't know if it was instinct or stupidity, but I moved between him and her. And I screamed. Loud. Full lungs. From my throat, raw and high and real. And then, someone else screamed back. A voice. From behind us. Then another. Footsteps. Fast. A flashlight beam slicing across the bricks. It was a security guard. Not from the theater, from the neighboring bowling alley, who just finished his rounds in the back lot and heard the commotion. The man with the knife didn't wait. He turned and vanished down the far end of the alley in seconds, swallowed by shadows. The security guard rushed over, radioed it in, helped us sit down, called an ambulance for Tyler. Tyler and Shane returned 10 minutes later, sheepish, pale, silent. Lexi didn't look at either of them. I didn't either. We gave our statements to the police. They never caught him. No fingerprints. No camera footage. No name. Just a face we remembered too clearly and a blade that could have gone deeper. I still think about that night. About the way the air changed when he stepped into the alley. About the weight of Lexi's hand in mine. About the scream that saved us and the silence that almost didn't. Tyler has a scar now. Shane moved to another school. We never really spoke again. Lexi and I did. For a while. But eventually, life moved on. Still, I avoid alleys now. Even in daylight. Because every time I walk past one, I wonder if he's there, waiting again. Not for wallets. Not for valuables. But for fear. And for someone else to run, so he can see who won't. They say the safest seat in a movie theater is in the back, against the wall, where you can see everyone. But what happens when the danger isn't in front of you? What happens when it's already seated behind you, still, silent, and far too close? I was 19 and newly single, the kind of freshly broken-hearted that makes you do things you normally wouldn't. That night, I just needed to be out of the apartment. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to scroll through photos of my ex. I just wanted to sit in the dark and forget for a few hours. So I went to the movies. Alone. I picked a late-night thriller, something loud, fast, and forgettable. The kind of film that would drown out the thoughts looping in my head. The theater was almost empty when I arrived. Just two couples near the middle, and a man in a hoodie sitting alone in the far corner. I chose a seat in the very back row, right by the emergency exit, something I did without thinking, more out of habit than strategy. The preview started. I sank into my seat and let the world blur away, until I noticed someone else slip into the row. He didn't make a sound. Just appeared 3 seats down, maybe 4. Too close for how empty the place was. He didn't rustle a popcorn bag or take off a coat. Just sat, rigid, staring forward. I didn't look directly at him, just enough to notice his posture, how he was leaning ever so slightly toward me. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe he liked the back row too. Maybe he didn't even realize I was there. But then I heard it. Breathing. Too loud. Too slow. Not like someone casually enjoying a film, but like someone deliberately controlling each inhale, each exhale. And then the click. I turned my head slightly. Not all the way. Just enough to glance sideways. He was staring at me, eyes wide, unblinking, and in his lap, clutched in one hand, was a small black device. A camera, pointed directly at me. My stomach dropped. I turned back to the screen, pretending I hadn't noticed. My skin prickled. I could feel his gaze, his breath, still slow, still steady. I slid my phone from my pocket and texted my roommate. There's a guy filming me. What do? No reply. No signal. Typical. I considered getting up, walking out, but I was blocked in. He'd moved closer. 1 seat now. The aisle was on his side. He must have shifted when I wasn't looking. I decided to act like I needed the bathroom. I stood slowly, not looking at him, and muttered, "Sorry." I squeezed past, careful not to touch him. He didn't move, didn't even blink. As I walked down the steps toward the exit, I felt his eyes follow me. Once outside the auditorium, I ducked into the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I waited, counted to 100. Nothing. I peeked out. The hallway was empty. So I did what I should have done sooner. I found an employee. The manager was a short woman with a walkie-talkie and an expression that said she'd seen it all. I told her everything. The man, the camera, the breathing. To her credit, she didn't brush me off. She called security. We walked back to the auditorium together. When we opened the door, he was gone. Just an empty seat. No sign of the camera. No jacket. No popcorn. No drink. Just a folded napkin left on the seat where he'd been sitting. The manager picked it up, puzzled, unfolded it, froze, then handed it to me, written in tiny, cramped letters. "You look better when you don't know you're being watched." They checked the cameras. There was footage of me entering, but nothing after. No man, no exit, no sign he'd ever been there at all. I stopped going to late-night movies after that. Actually, I stopped going alone altogether. But the story doesn't end there. About a week later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name, written in sharp, thin handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. Blurry, grainy. Me, sitting in that seat by the exit, looking at the screen, smiling, just a little. And in the corner of the image, a reflection. His face, over my shoulder. Too close, too clear. I moved apartments, changed my number, got a new phone. But the letters didn't stop. Once a month. Always the same. No message. Just a photo. Each one from a different public place I'd visited. The grocery store. A cafe. The bus. And always me. Never looking at the camera, but always with that same signature in the bottom right corner. "I see you. I've spoken to police. They can't do much. No threats. No name. No fingerprints. Just a pattern. A man who's always there. Just far enough to be legal. Just close enough to feel it. I don't know who he is, or what he wants, but I haven't been to a movie in over a year, and I still don't sit near exits, because sometimes, when I let my guard down, I feel the weight of someone breathing behind me, and I remember the seat by the exit. We always sat in the same seats, middle row, dead center, perfect view of the screen. But that night, there was a man already sitting there. Not unusual, not alarming, at first, until he turned around and smiled like he knew us, like he'd been waiting. It was a Thursday, early fall, the kind of crisp evening where the sky hangs low and orange and everything feels just a bit sharper. Our small-town theater was running a late showing of a cult horror classic, The Watchers in the Dark, a grainy, weird 80s flick none of us had seen but all pretended to love. There were 4 of us, me, James, Emily, and Chloe. We were that kind of post-high school, pre-life friend group, stuck in the weird space between growing up and letting go. Thursday night horror movies had become our ritual. $5 tickets, cheap popcorn, shared glances when the tension got too high. The theater was one of those barely surviving indie joints, red velvet seats with stuffing leaking at the seams, a screen that buzzed faintly at the edges, bathrooms that smelled of forgotten summers. But it had character, charm, the kind of place that makes you feel like the world outside is paused. And it had row E. Always row E, seats 13 to 16. The center of the universe. That night, we walked in 15 minutes early, laughing too loud, still high on coffee and inside jokes. That's when we saw him. He was already sitting in row E, seat 14. Our seat. Our exact seat. Middle of the row. Perfectly still. He wore a black jacket, zipped to the chin, and a gray knit cap pulled low over his ears. His hands rested neatly in his lap, fingers interlocked. Nothing unusual about him, except he wasn't watching the screen. He was watching us. As soon as we stepped into the aisle, his head turned, slowly, precisely, and locked onto our group. And he smiled. Not a big smile. Not a creepy one. Just like he knew us. Like he'd been waiting. We hesitated, then laughed it off. No big deal. We could just sit behind him, row F. No harm done. Still, I glanced back at him as we passed. He didn't look away. Just kept smiling. Like he was counting us. We sat down in the row behind him. The theater stayed mostly empty. A couple in the back. 2 guys in the far corner. That was it. The lights dimmed. The previews rolled. Still, the man didn't look forward. He kept facing us. Even as the movie started, a flickering title card over static and a droning synth score, he stared. James finally leaned forward and tapped his shoulder. "Hey, man, you okay?" The man turned his head, just barely, then whispered something. James leaned closer. The man whispered again. James recoiled. "What did he say?" Emily asked. James didn't answer, just stared at the back of the man's head. The movie played on. We tried to focus, but James wouldn't stop glancing at him. Finally, I leaned over and whispered, "What did he say?" James's voice was flat, quiet. He said, "This is your seat, but you're too late now." I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I needed it to be. Halfway through the film, the man stood up. No noise, no ceremony. Just rose from the seat, turned to face us, one row up, head tilted slightly. His eyes never blinked. His smile never moved. Then he walked out of the theater. We waited for the door to click shut. It didn't, because he never opened it. He just stepped into the shadows at the edge of the screen, past the final row, between the red curtain and the emergency door, and vanished. We thought he left, but the door never opened. The exit sign above it still glowed. Emily said maybe he worked there. Maybe he had a reason. Maybe it was a joke. But none of us laughed anymore. The movie ended. The credits rolled. The lights came up. We stayed in our seats for a moment, unsure. Then we filed out, past the rows, past row E, past seat 14. It was empty. Or it should have been, because on the seat was a Polaroid, just sitting there, face up. Emily picked it up, her face drained of color. She passed it to me. It was us, sitting in row F. In that exact moment, from behind. But no one had been behind us. No one had a camera. No flash. No click. Nothing. The photo was still warm. We gave it to the manager. He shrugged it off, told us the back rows didn't have cameras, said maybe someone was messing with us. But he looked uneasy, told us seat 14's had complaints before. We asked what kind of complaints. He paused, then said, "Doesn't matter. We're remodeling next month," and walked away. We didn't go back the next Thursday, or the next. James stopped texting. Chloe unfollowed everyone a few weeks later. Emily moved out of state. That night was the last time all four of us were together. Months later, I drove past the theater. It was closed. Windows papered over. Sign stripped bare. But one of the doors was propped open. Just a crack. Out of curiosity, or maybe something deeper, I parked and walked up. Peeked inside. The lobby was dark. Empty. But from inside the theater, I saw it. A single glowing screen. No movie playing. Just static. And sitting in the center, row E, seat 14, was a figure. Still. Smiling. Waiting. I didn't go in. I don't go to movies anymore. But sometimes, when the TV flickers at night, I hear a seat creak behind me. And I remember the whisper James never wanted to say out loud. "You're too late now." Most people think of horror in the front, on the screen, in the shadows between the audience and the light. But I've learned real horror lies above you. In the little square window high on the back wall, where someone is always watching, even when there's nothing left to project. I got the job at the old theater because no one else wanted it. It was a second-run cinema on the edge of town, wedged between a vape shop and a failing nail salon. The kind of place that smelled like spilled soda, moldy carpet, and nostalgia. A crumbling three-screen relic, clinging to relevance with discounted tickets and posters that peeled in the corners. I was 19, had just dropped out of college. I needed money, and they needed a warm body to keep the projectors running. My title was night manager, but really, I was a glorified button pusher and floor mopper. On weekends, we had actual customers. On weeknights, it was usually just me and one of the ushers, a quiet kid named Toby who liked monster movies and spoke in single-word sentences. The upstairs projection booth was my domain, and that's where it started. We only used one screen during the week, Theater 2, the biggest of the three. It seated 130 if you counted the broken row in the back. Most nights, we were lucky to fill 10. I liked it up there in the booth. Cool, quiet, detached. You could see everything from that little window, the rows of seats, the flickering screen, the backs of every person's head. It felt godlike. Safe. Until the night the reel jammed. It was just past 10 p.m. We were showing some forgettable thriller that had already bombed in theaters. A handful of bored customers scattered through the room. More than usual, but not many. About 40 minutes in, the projector hiccuped. Not the first time. I stood, stretched, and went over to fix it. As I opened the housing, I glanced down through the window to the seats below, a habit I developed out of boredom. And I saw her, a woman in the very back row, staring up at the booth. That wasn't unusual in itself. Some people like to know where the light came from. But she wasn't just looking. She was smiling. Wide, direct, fixed on me, like she'd been waiting for me to notice. And her eyes, too wide, too still. I blinked. The light from the film reel flickered. She was gone. I stepped back from the window, heart ticking too fast. I told myself it was an illusion, that the shadows and flickers had played a trick. I even leaned back down and looked again. Nothing. Empty row. All normal. But something in me knew. Something had shifted. And the jam? Gone. The reel spun smoothly, even though I hadn't touched it. The next night was quiet. Only 3 customers showed. Toby manned the ticket desk. I did my usual. Unlocked the booth, prepped the machine, dimmed the lights. I peeked through the window again. Empty theater. Fine. But then, just before the trailers ended, she was there again. Back row. Same seat. Same smile. And this time, she raised her hand. Slow. Deliberate. And pointed directly at me. I backed away from the window and slammed the projector housing shut. The film ran without issue, but I never looked again. Not that night. Not even when I heard the soft tap on the projection room door 15 minutes later. 3 knocks. Measured. Polite. I didn't answer. Didn't move. Just stared at the door, breath locked in my chest. The knob never turned. The knocking never repeated. But when I finally opened the door hours later, after the film ended and the customers had gone home, there was a note on the floor, typed on yellowing paper. You can see me now. That means I can see you too. I quit the next morning. Told the manager I had another job. He barely looked up from his paper. Just muttered, figured. But I didn't leave right away. I needed to know. I needed proof. So I came back that night. Not as an employee. Just as someone buying a ticket. The theater was nearly empty. One other customer besides me, a middle-aged man with a weathered face and a cane, who didn't say a word as we passed each other. I sat in the middle of the row this time. Direct line of sight to the back seats. In the booth. I watched the film and waited. 10 minutes. 20. 30. Nothing. Until the film paused. The screen froze. Lights didn't come on. No sound. Just the projector beam burning through a still image. And then, from the back row, a creak. A figure stood up. Walked slowly down the aisle. Stopped 2 rows behind me. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't move. Then, a whisper. You left your window open. I turned. The row was empty. But on the seat behind me was a spool of film. An old reel. Labeled in red ink. The projectionist. I took it home. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. But I did. And at 2:13 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. The voice on the other end was static. Distorted. But beneath it, a whisper I could still make out. Play it. I threw the reel away the next day. But it was on my desk the morning after. And the day after that. I moved apartments. It followed. Now, when I look at any screen, phone, laptop, TV, sometimes I see it. A frame that lingers too long. A shape in the booth. Watching. Waiting. They reopened the theater last month. New owners. New name. But when I walked past one evening, just to see, I noticed something familiar. The projector window, high above Theater 2, was open. And inside, silhouetted against the flickering light, a woman. Smiling. I never went in. But I hear she shows up sometimes. Always in the back row. Always looking up. And if you work the booth long enough, they say you'll see her too. But if you acknowledge her, if you let her know you can see her, then the knocking begins. And the reel appears. And when it does, don't play it. Don't look into the light. And never, ever leave your window open. You don't really see people at the movies. They're shadows in the dark, seat fillers, murmurs, reflections in the screen's glow. But that night, one man never sat down, and he watched us like the movie wasn't for him, like we were the show. It was supposed to be a double date. Me, my best friend Ava, her boyfriend Luke, and the guy she was trying to set me up with, Tyler. The plan was simple. Catch the 8:45 showing of some overhyped supernatural horror flick. Make dumb jokes about it afterward over milkshakes, and maybe, just maybe, I'd like Tyler enough to text him later. We met in the lobby around 8:20. It was busier than usual, a Friday night crowd. but nothing unmanageable. Just clusters of teens, couples sharing popcorn, the usual flurry of people checking their phones and trying to remember which screen their movie was in. We grabbed snacks and made our way to screen 7. That was the first time I saw him. The man in the hallway. He stood just outside the theater doors. Not against the wall or by the posters, but directly in the way, like he was a misplaced usher. Dark clothes. Long coat. Too long, considering it was warm out. Ball cap pulled low. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't looking at the posters. He was looking at the theater doors. And not in a curious, checking Showtime way. In a waiting way. I remember thinking he was maybe just a lonely guy, the type who sees movies alone and wants to feel part of something. But when we passed, he didn't move. Didn't glance at us. Just stood there. We found our seats about halfway up, row G, I think. The theater was about 70% full. People were still trickling in, chattering, shuffling, the usual pre-movie commotion. I glanced back just before the lights dimmed. The man had entered. He stood at the top of the stairs, near the door. Still hadn't taken a seat. His face was in shadow, but I could see the shine of his eyes. Not scanning for a spot. Just watching. The trailers began. Everyone else turned forward. Except him. He stood still as stone in the aisle. Didn't move, didn't shift. Just kept staring down at the crowd. I leaned toward Ava. Do you know that guy? She followed my gaze. Sighed. Creeper. Probably waiting for someone. But Tyler was frowning now too. Why not just sit? There's plenty of seats. Maybe he's staff, Luke offered, even though the man wasn't wearing anything close to a uniform. I shrugged it off. Tried to. Until the movie started. And he still hadn't sat down. For the first 20 minutes, I couldn't focus. Every time the screen flashed brightly, it lit up his outline, like a cardboard cutout watching a scene over and over. He never looked at the movie. Just at us. At the audience. It felt wrong. Like we were the ones under a spotlight. And then he moved. Not fast. Just 2 steps forward, down the aisle. Paused. Then another step. He was making his way slowly, subtly, row by row, like he was pacing, or choosing. I nudged Tyler. He's walking down now. Tyler turned. What the hell is he doing? And then the man stopped. Right at our row. We all froze. He didn't speak. Didn't sit. Just stood at the end of the row, facing in, looking at us, but not seeing us. It felt like being measured. Evaluated. I opened my mouth to say something, ask if he needed help, or if he was lost, but before I could, he turned around and walked back up the aisle. Out the door. No explanation. No sound. Gone. The rest of the movie passed in a fog. We tried to laugh it off afterward. Called him the row inspector. But the mood had changed. We all felt it. A coldness. Not just the AC kind. We left the theater quickly, eager to shake the feeling. And that's when we saw him again. He was standing across the lobby now, just inside the entrance. No longer by the theater door, just waiting again. Watching. But not us. He was watching the other people leaving the theater. All of them, one by one, head tilting slightly as each passed, like he was scanning faces. And then his eyes landed on me. I stopped walking. My breath caught. He raised his hand. Slowly. Not to wave. To point. Right at me. Luke stepped between us. Keep moving, he said. Gently but firmly. We did. We walked straight out, past the snack bar, past the box office, into the parking lot. I looked back once. He was gone. We stood by our cars for a few minutes, trying to shake it off. Tyler made a joke. Ava offered to come sleep over. I said I'd be fine. I lied. That night, I triple-locked the door, closed the curtains, slept with the TV on, just in case. The next morning, I got a text from Ava. Check the news. And there it was. Unidentified man found inside screen 7 after hours. Apparently, one of the overnight cleaners found him curled up under the seats in row G. Unconscious. Unarmed. No ID. Refused to speak. Just kept smiling. When police tried to question him, he whispered something over and over. I found her. They asked who. He wouldn't say. He hasn't spoken since. I moved out of town 2 months later. Took a job in another city. Changed my number. Only told a few people. Because a week after that article ran, I got a letter. No return address. No stamp. Just tucked into the crack of my apartment door. Inside was a movie ticket. Screen 7. Row G. Seat 8. And underneath it, scribbled in pen. So where you belong. I burned it. Blocked the theater on every app one had. But some nights, when I pass a dark hallway or a set of double doors, I still feel it. That stare. That sensation of being chosen. And I wonder, if I ever go back, if I ever sit in seat 8 again, will he finally take a seat beside me? Or was he never looking for a movie, only for a matching shadow? You know the space behind the movie screen? That dark void where the wall should be? You're not supposed to go back there. And now I know why. I started working at the Redwood Cinema when I was 16, part-time, mostly sweeping popcorn and tearing tickets. It was the kind of place that still had velvet seats and real curtains that opened with a groan before the previews. A nostalgic dump. But I liked it. My favorite theater was number 1. It was the oldest of the bunch, with the biggest screen and those antique sconces on the side walls that buzzed quietly whenever the projector started rolling. It was charming in a forgotten, off-kilter way. Except for one thing. Behind the screen, there was a curtain. No one talked about it. No one ever went back there. It was more like a drape, really a long, heavy black sheet that hung from the rafters behind the projection wall. It wasn't attached to anything, just floated down in folds like a theater's backstage curtain. But there was no backstage. Behind the screen was supposed to be solid wall. At least, that's what the blueprints said. I first noticed it one night during a cleanup. The film had ended. The crowd filtered out. I stayed back to sweep up soda cups and popcorn kernels. And as I stood near the front of the room, the projector behind me still buzzing, I saw movement behind the bottom edge of the screen. A flicker, like someone ducking. I walked up closer, peered around the side of the screen, and saw it, the curtain, gently swaying, even though there was no draft. No air vents. Nothing. It moved like something had just slipped past it. I told my manager, Neil. He gave me a look. Long tired. You didn't see anything. I did. I think someone was back there. No one goes behind the screen. But he leaned in, voice low. There is no behind the screen. Not really. Not anymore. Then he walked away. Didn't bring it up again. Neither did I. But I kept watching it. That curtain. And it kept moving. A few weeks later, I had to close alone. Neil called out sick. The other ushers were all off. It was a Wednesday. Dead night. Only 2 theaters were in use. I finished my duties early. Sat in theater 1 during the last showing, just keeping an eye on things. About halfway through the movie, some slow burn psychological horror, the screen flickered. Just once. A glitch. Then again. But this time, when it glitched, I swear, I saw an image. Not a frame from the film. Something else. A hallway. Flickering light bulb. A figure in the distance. Just for a second. Then it was gone. I turned to the booth. But the projectionist wasn't there. I was the only one in the building. And the movie kept playing. At the end of the film, I turned the house lights on. They buzzed. Dimmed. Then surged. And the curtain behind the screen moved. No draft. No air. Just a slow, deliberate wave, like it was breathing. That's when I heard it. Whispering. From behind the screen. Low. Urgent. Too many voices at once. I stepped closer. Drawn to it. Not because I wanted to go, but because something wanted me to. I slipped around the side of the screen. The light from the theater faded behind me. The air was colder. And the curtain. It was open. Not fully. Just enough to see what was beyond it. Nothing. Not blackness. Absence. It was like looking into a hole in the world. No sound. No echo. Just wrong. And then something stepped out of it. I didn't see it. Not clearly. But I saw the impression of it. Tall, narrow, shifting like it was made of wet cloth and static. It didn't walk. It flowed. Slid. And it didn't face me. Because it didn't have a face. Just a smooth, reflective surface where a head should be. Like a mirror warped by heat. And in it, I saw myself. Standing there. Staring back. Mouth open in a scream I hadn't made yet. I ran. Fell down the stairs. Hit my knee on the railing. But I didn't stop. I fled the theater, lights still on, movie still looping in some endless broken frame. Outside, the night air felt fake. Too still. Too flat. Like I hadn't come all the way back. I quit the next day. Didn't give a reason. Neil didn't ask for one. He just nodded. Almost like he expected it. A month later, the theater shut down. Code violations. Mold. Unsafe structure, the news said. I never went back. But sometimes, I check forums, Urban Explorer threads, Reddit horror subs. Once, I found a post. Anonymous. No replies. Just a blurry photo of a curtain behind a screen. Captioned, "Step through. Still here. Don't come looking. It sees everything." And in the comments, someone had linked coordinates. They led to the woods behind the old theater. To a path that shouldn't exist. To nowhere. Now, every so often, when I catch a glitch in a movie or a flicker that doesn't match the scene, I wonder if it's trying to show me something, trying to invite me back. The curtain only moves when it knows you're watching, so don't stare too long, don't walk too close, and whatever you do, never step behind the screen. It began with a creak, not just any creak, but a precise, rhythmic groan, as if the stairs themselves were exhaling. And as the night deepened, the breath drew closer, step by step, toward my door. I never liked sleeping downstairs. My room was in the basement, a finished one, sure, with carpet and painted walls and a low ceiling that echoed more than it absorbed, but it always felt just a little off. The kind of place where the air hangs too still, where light bulbs flicker a little faster than they should, where sound seems to travel wrong. But when you're 15, and the only room your parents will give you is the one below the rest of the house, you learn to cope. I had a routine to keep the fear out. Music at low volume. Desk lamp left on. Closet doors double-checked. And, most importantly, the basement door locked from the inside. That lock was everything. Because I was convinced, though I never said it aloud, that something watched from the stairs. It started, as these things often do, on an otherwise ordinary night. Rain ticked against the windows like fingernails on glass. My parents were asleep upstairs. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone under the covers, headphones in, half listening to a podcast I wasn't really absorbing. That's when I heard it. Creak. I pulled the earbuds out. Waited. Nothing. Probably just the house settling. Old wood. Humidity. I went back to my podcast. Creak. Again. Same cadence. Same spot. The third stair from the top. I froze. Because I knew that sound. Knew it too well. There are 34 stairs between my room and the kitchen. I counted them every time I went up or down, always needing to know how far away the light was. The third stair from the top had a warp board. Stepped on just right, it would groan like something waking up. No one ever stepped on it at night. No one should have. Creak. The fourth stair. I reached for my bedside lamp. Clicked it on. The bulb buzzed. Dimmed. Then flared to life. I stared at the basement door at the far side of the room. Still closed. Still locked. I listened. Nothing. Then, creak. Closer. Slower. I got up. Crossed the room on bare feet. Pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then, just beneath the threshold, too soft to be real, too perfect to be imagined. Breathing. I stepped back. Heart pounding. The kind of pounding that makes your chest hurt. That makes you want to scream without making a sound. I turned the bolt. Unlocked the door. Waited. Swung it open. Nothing. Empty stairwell. Lights off. Still air. But the fourth step? Dustless. Worn. Like it had just been touched. I closed the door again. Locked it. Shoved my dresser in front of it. Just in case. Then I returned to bed. Didn't sleep. Not really. The next morning, I asked my parents if they'd come downstairs last night. My mom shook her head. No, honey. Why? I didn't answer. Just looked past her to the stairs. Still. Silent. Waiting. It happened again 3 nights later. Same time, 2:17 a.m. Same rhythm. One step. Pause. Another. Pause. Like something listening between each movement. Like it knew I was awake. But that night, something changed. I didn't just hear it. I saw it. My door was cracked, not much, just enough to show the glow of my desk lamp. And in that inch of light, I saw a shadow. Not a person's. Something thinner. Taller. Not cast on the wall, but on the air. Like smoke. It leaned forward, impossibly slow, until it touched the door frame. And then, it tapped. Once. A light knock. Polite. Almost curious. I slammed the door shut, flipped the lock, and didn't sleep until dawn. I didn't tell my parents. Didn't want them to laugh. Or worse, worry. So I kept it to myself. Until I couldn't anymore. The next week was a blur. Every night, it came back. The creaking. The tapping. The breathing. I blocked the door. Covered it with towels. Played music loud enough to hurt. Nothing worked. It kept coming. Closer. Hungrier. And then, one night, it spoke. Let me in. A voice. Soft. Young. My voice. Coming from the other side of the door. Mimicking me. Repeating things I'd said in that room. To myself, to my friends, over the phone. I'm not scared. I'm fine. It's just the house. Over and over. A chorus of my own lies, whispered back at me. Let me in. I didn't. I never did. But the door began to warp, with splintering under pressure. Screws rattling. The lock ticking like something inside it was being slowly, expertly picked. I couldn't take it. I ran upstairs. Slept on the couch. Refused to go back down. My parents thought I was losing it. Nightmares, they said. Stress. Maybe take a break from your phone. They didn't understand. Until the morning my mother found the door open. And the stairs, every one of them, wet. Like something had crawled up from the dark, dragging water behind it. They had a priest bless the house. Didn't work. Had a contractor check the foundation. He quit halfway through. Said the space under the stairs felt wrong. Said the air shifted when he stood too close. He didn't finish the job. Didn't come back. Eventually, we moved. Sold the house cheap to a couple from out of state. They had a kid. A boy. They fixed up the basement. Turned it into a playroom. Painted over the walls. Redid the floors. But they kept the stairs. And they never changed the third step. I drive by sometimes. Not often. Just enough to remind myself it was real. That I survived. But last week, I passed at dusk. Saw the boy standing at the basement window. Staring out. Expression blank. Eyes wide. Mouth moving silently. I rolled down my window. And for just a moment, I heard him whisper, "Let me in. Let me in. Let me." I drove away. Didn't look back. Because I know what happens next. First, the stairs creak. Then they breathe. And finally, they open. Just wide enough for something to slip through. And claim a room. That was once mine. Locks are supposed to make you feel safe. But that night, the deadbolt turned on its own. And I realized safety had never been real. Just a thin line between inside and out. And something had just crossed it. I was house-sitting for my aunt and uncle while they were on vacation in Arizona. The house was tucked in a quiet, wooded suburb just outside the city, a little too far from neighbors, with trees that pressed close like they were eavesdropping. It had a long gravel driveway, motion-activated lights, and a massive front window that looked out onto nothing but blackness after 7 p.m. They said I'd like the quiet. I didn't. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was oppressive. At night, the house felt like a held breath. But I needed the extra cash, and it was only for a week. 7 days. I lasted 3. The first night passed uneventfully. I fed their cat, watered the plants, and dozed off watching reruns in the living room. I double-checked the doors before bed. Every lock clicked shut, especially the deadbolt on the front door, one of those heavy ones you twist by hand, loud and definite. It was a comforting sound. A final, "You're safe." I locked it at 11:03 p.m. I remember the time exactly, because at 2:14 a.m., it unlocked. I wasn't dreaming. I'd always been a light sleeper, and the sound click, ka-chunk pulled me upright in an instant. My heart stuttered, confused. I listened. Silence. No footsteps. No creaking floorboards. Just the dark. And the sound of the front door drifting open. Not all the way. Just enough to groan. Just enough to let something in. I didn't move. I didn't call out. I just sat frozen on the couch, the blanket twisted around my legs like a snare, and stared toward the foyer, where the pale, angular outline of the open door dawned into blackness. Nothing moved in or out. But I felt something. Like pressure. Like being watched through a camera lens. Then, after what felt like an hour, I finally moved. I crept to the door, heart punching holes through my ribs, and shut it. Locked it again. Checked it twice. Then I sat up the rest of the night, too afraid to even blink for too long. I told myself I'd imagined it. Sleep paralysis. A leftover dream fragment. I mean, who breaks into a house just to open the door? Not take anything. Not even step inside. It made no sense. Until it happened again. The second night, I locked the door at 10:56. This time, I took a photo timestamped, just to be sure. I even placed a chair under the knob, tipped so any movement would knock it over. I sat up late watching a movie, trying to laugh, trying to be normal. But at 2:17 a.m., the chair fell over. I leapt up. The deadbolt was unlocked. The door was open again. And this time, something was inside. I didn't see it, not clearly. Just a shadow retreating down the hall. Too tall. Too still. Moving without footsteps. It turned the corner toward the kitchen. I grabbed my phone, hands slick with sweat, and called 911. No service. Not just bad reception. Nothing. 0 bars. No signal. Like the whole house had been cut off. I backed away, whispering to myself, heart surging like it wanted to escape my chest. Then I remembered the cat. Mittens had been asleep on the windowsill, totally unbothered the night before. Now she was gone. I found her cowering under the bed, pupils wide, fur bristled, low growl in her throat. She'd always been a sweet, lazy thing. Until that night. Until whatever it was came in through the door. By the time the police arrived, an hour after the lines came back, the house looked normal. Nothing broken. Nothing missing. The officers were polite but skeptical. Suggested it might have been a door swell. Humidity, one of them muttered. I asked if they could check the footage. My aunt had a doorbell cam, a nice one, too, always recording. They agreed. But there was nothing. No one at the door. No sound. Except, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the camera froze. For 13 seconds. Then resumed. And the door was open. They had no explanation. Suggested a faulty unit. Suggested I was stressed. Suggested I go stay somewhere else. I agreed. Packed up. Locked everything behind me. But when I opened the front door to leave, I noticed something I hadn't before. Scratches. On the inside of the door. Thin. Precise. Not like keys or claws. Like fingernails. And beneath them, etched into the paint, just above the deadbolt. IT doesn't need to break in if you let it out first. I called my aunt. Asked if she or my uncle had ever had weird experiences in the house. She went quiet. Too quiet. Then she said, "Don't stay there." "I already left," I replied. Another pause. Then, almost too soft to hear. "Good. That's how it starts." They came home 2 days later. Didn't mention it again. Didn't ask me what happened. Just thanked me, paid me, and changed the subject. But 2 weeks later, my aunt called. Said the front door was open one morning. Said they'd installed new locks. Said they heard something moving at night. I asked if they'd seen it. She didn't answer. Then the call dropped. Now, every night, at 2:17 a.m., I wake up. Not because of a noise. Not because of a dream. Because I feel it. That same pressure. Like a breath on my back. Like a door opening, far away, in a house I'm no longer in. And sometimes, I swear I hear the lock click. Even though there's no deadbolt in my bedroom. Even though I've moved twice since. And even though I never let it follow me. Did I? Because locks only work if there's nothing already inside. And sometimes, the thing you're trying to keep out is waiting for you to open the door. The screen flickered as the credits rolled, and we all stood, but one man stayed seated. He hadn't moved the whole film. No drink, no popcorn, no blinking. And when the lights came on, we realized he wasn't watching the movie. He was watching us. There's something uniquely eerie about being in a nearly empty movie theater after midnight. The way the exit signs glow red like wounds. The stale smell of popcorn lingering too long. The hush that settles after the credits end, like the room itself is exhaling. I worked the concession stand at a small, dying theater in the outskirts of town. We ran late shows on Fridays, usually horror flicks or old cult classics, and I liked closing shift. It was quiet. Predictable. The customers were tired or stoned or both. They'd trickle out, I'd clean the lobby, and by 1 a.m., the place was mine. That night was the 12:15 showing of an indie horror movie called Black Ask. No one had really heard of it, and our crowd reflected that. 7 people in total. For teens, 2 older guys who didn't talk, and a woman who sat in the back, silent. They filed into Theater 3. I remember watching them go, counting automatically, mentally calculating how many sodas I'd have to mop off the floor later. But I miscounted. There were 8. I noticed it because of the seat chart. We didn't do assigned seating, not really, but our point-of-sale system still tracked where tickets were scanned. 7 tickets sold. But when I glanced at the security feed 30 minutes into the film, there were 8 distinct shapes in the seats. One in the dead center. Alone. Row H, seat 11. Perfectly aligned with the screen. Didn't move once. The movie ended at 1:47 a.m. The teens left first, giggling nervously like they were pretending not to be scared. The 2 men followed, silent and glassy-eyed. The woman from the back was the last to leave, walking slowly, shoulders hunched, as if the air had thickened. I was about to lock the door when the projector light flickered off, but row H still had someone in it. I blinked at the feed, zoomed in, still there, still motionless. I radioed Cole, the projectionist, who was upstairs shutting everything down. Hey, Theater 3's got a straggler. Static. Then, already cleared it. No one was in there. I stared at the screen. No, man. He's still sitting. Center row. Can't miss him. A pause. I'll check again. I watched the feed as Cole entered Theater 3, his flashlight sweeping the rows. Row G. Row H. He stopped, tilted his light. The beam passed over seat 11. And there was nothing. Empty seat. No coat. No bag. No popcorn tub. Just a faint imprint. Like someone had been sitting. Like the fabric remembered better than we did. Cole radioed back. Empty. You okay, man? I didn't answer. Because while Cole stood there in the dark, his flashlight still moving. I saw the security feed change. The man, the one from row H, was now standing at the back of the theater. Just watching Cole. No movement. No expression. Just there. And then the feed cut out. I ran to the projection booth. But Cole was fine. Packing up reels, humming to himself. No one there, he said again. I asked about the man. Described him. Dark clothes. Pale face. Unblinking. Cole shrugged. Didn't see anyone like that. I told him about the feed. He laughed. Probably a glitch. These cameras are older than me. But when I checked the recording later, there was no eighth person. Not during the movie. Not in the seats. Not standing behind Cole. Just static. And then, for one single frame, a face. Pressed against the lens. Mouth open, like it was screaming. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't close the theater properly, either. Left the mop bucket by the popcorn machine. Didn't reset the soda lines. My manager called the next morning, irritated. I didn't answer. Because I was already back at the theater. I had to see it again. Had to prove to myself it was just exhaustion. That maybe I'd hallucinated. That maybe I was losing it. I checked the server room. Opened the file from last night's 12:15 showing. Fast-forwarded to the exact moment the movie ended. And there he was. Row H, seat 11. Still there. Everyone else leaves. He does not. The timestamp glitches. Then, the camera changes. Suddenly, we're seeing from his point of view. Looking at me. At the concession stand. Looking through the camera. I quit the next day. Didn't give notice. Didn't take my last check. They replaced me by Tuesday. But I still check the theater's website. They still play late-night horror films in Theater 3. Still advertise it as the perfect place to get scared. I saw a review last month. Cool place, old school vibe. Weird thing though, during the credits, we saw a guy sitting dead center, just staring. We joked he was part of the movie, but when we turned around, he was gone. And the seat they listed? Row H, seat 11. I don't watch movies in theaters anymore. Not even during the day. But sometimes I dream about it. That theater. That screen. That moment when the lights come up and everyone stands, except one. The one in the middle. The one who never buys a ticket. The one who's not watching the film. Because he's always watching. You. They say those glowing red signs above the side doors are for safety. But what happens when they don't lead you out? And instead, lead something in? I just started working at the Regal Grandview, a half-forgotten theater tucked between a defunct Sears and an abandoned pet store in a dying strip mall. It was the kind of place where the carpets were sticky no matter how often you mopped, and the popcorn smelled like it was recycled. But I didn't mind. It was a job. Night shifts paid a little extra. Plus, I liked being there when it was quiet. Until Theater 5. There was always something off about that room. We all felt it. The other employees had names for it. The cold one, Exit Echo, or, jokingly, the theater that watches back. The manager said it was built with a weird blueprint, like the acoustics were wrong or the walls were too thin. Every time a movie ended, there'd be reports of strange drafts, flickering lights, muffled voices from the rear corners. But I didn't believe in haunted theaters. Not then. Not until the night I got locked in. It was just past midnight. The last show, some horror reboot with way too many jump scares, had wrapped up. I was doing my rounds, sweeping up stray cups, checking seats for gum. I had my AirPods in, half listening to a podcast about unsolved disappearances. The crowd had been light, maybe 6 people. All gone now. Or so I thought. As I moved down the middle aisle with my broom, I noticed something weird. The side exit door, the one just to the left of the screen, was cracked open. Not fully. Just a sliver of air between the frame and the door, just enough to see the darkness beyond. Which was strange. Those doors were never to be opened except in emergencies. They were heavy, alarm-rigged, and rusted shut 90% of the time. I stepped closer. The air near it was cold, not just drafty, but deep chill cold, like winter on the other side. And then I heard it. A low humming. Not from the speakers. Not from the hallway. From outside that door. A melody. Soft. Dissonant. Like someone humming a tune they didn't quite remember. I reached out, and the door opened on its own. I should have left it. Should have just walked away, told my manager in the morning, and written it off as a maintenance issue. But instead, I stepped through. It didn't lead to the back alley. Didn't open onto the concrete loading area like it was supposed to. It led to another hallway. Narrow. Too narrow. No lights except the dim red glow of the exit sign above. And the smell, like mildew and wet metal. I turned back. But the door was gone. Just wall. As if I'd walked through a mouth that had already closed behind me. I didn't panic. Not yet. I thought, maybe this was some weird service corridor, a relic of the mall's original construction. Maybe I'd wandered into a sealed-off part of the building. But the farther I walked, the more wrong it felt. The hall didn't end. It turned, sharply, at angles that made no architectural sense. Every 20 feet or so, there was another exit sign above another red door. None of them opened. Some didn't even have handles. Just smooth metal slabs, humming faintly. Like they were holding something in. I started hearing footsteps. Not mine. Ahead of me. Then behind. Light, careful, bare. Like someone walking just out of sight. I called out. Hello? Anyone there? The humming stopped. Then, from just around the next turn. This way. A child's voice. Female. Soft. Too soft. Like it had never spoken aloud before. I ran. Not fast. Not recklessly. But fast enough to feel my breath catch in my throat. I turned corner after corner, looking for a way out. But the halls were endless. Identical. Except for the stains. Dark patches on the floor. Drag marks. Fingernails embedded in the walls. One had a name scratched into it. Miranda, 1998. I stopped running. Because I knew that name. Miranda O'Neill. A girl who went missing from my town 25 years ago. Disappeared during a movie. Her parents swore she never left the building. Police found her jacket in Theater 5. They said she must have run away. But I remembered the headlines. So did everyone. No trace. No footage. Just vanished. Like she'd walked out a door that wasn't supposed to open. I started to cry. Silent, panicked tears. Not because I was scared of being hurt, but because I realized I wasn't the first. Eventually, I found another door. Not an emergency exit. Not glowing red. This one was wooden. Old. Warped. No handle. Just a keyhole. I didn't have a key. I pressed my palm to it. And it opened anyway. I stumbled through into light. Fluorescent. Harsh. Blinking. I was back in the theater. The real one. The screen was still playing previews for a movie I'd never heard of. The seats were empty. Or almost. Row H, seat 6. A girl. Thin. Wearing a faded Spice Girls t-shirt. She looked at me. Her eyes hollow. But her lips moved. One word. Run. I did. Out the doors. Into the lobby. Slammed the breaker to cut power to Theater 5. Then I called my manager. Told him something was wrong. Very wrong. They locked the theater the next day. Renovations, the sign said. I never went back. But sometimes I dream of the hallway. Of the red signs. Of doors that breathe. And once, just once, I woke up to find a ticket stub on my nightstand. Yellowed. Stamped. Theater 5, emergency exit, seat 6. And scrawled on the back, in a child's writing. Still waiting. Still watching. Still open. There was a girl sitting alone near the front of the theater. She didn't react when the movie started, or when the lights dimmed, or when I asked if she was okay. And when I finally got close enough to touch her shoulder, I realized she wasn't supposed to be there at all. The call came in at 11:37 p.m. I was the night manager at Crestline Cinemas, and we were just closing up. Tuesday nights were dead, 2 showings, both done, popcorn machines already wiped, employees already clocked out. I was checking the back exit doors one last time when the phone rang from the box office. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was shaky, male, maybe mid-40s. Hi, I think. I think I left my jacket in Theater 2. Toward the front. Can you check? I sighed. But sure, why not? It was late, but I was still on the clock. I told him to hold. Then I went to Theater 2. The room was dark except for the aisle lights and the faint blue flicker of the emergency exit signs. The screen was black. Silent. I walked down the middle aisle, letting my flashlight sweep across the rows. Nothing on the seats. Just a few scattered napkins and a half-full drink cup. I kept walking toward the front. Then I saw her. Row B, seat 9. A girl, maybe 12 or 13, sitting straight up, arms in her lap, facing the screen. Still, I stopped in the aisle, a few rows back, startled. We were closed. All customers had left. How had she stayed behind? How had we missed her? My first instinct was worry. Maybe she got separated from her family. Maybe she fell asleep. But she didn't look asleep. She looked, posed. Hey there, I said gently. The movie's over. Are you okay? No response. Just the softest sound, not even breathing. The silence of someone deeply present but completely unreachable. I stepped closer, heart knocking a little harder now. Do you need help? I asked. Do your parents know where you are? Still nothing. No blink. No twitch. Her hair was long and dark, a little tangled. She wore an old hoodie, too big for her, and jeans with frayed cuffs. Scuffed sneakers. I noticed something odd then. Her seat wasn't reclined. It wasn't even one of the newer seats. It was one of the old ones. Upholstered in faded red, the kind we'd ripped out and replaced 2 years ago. I didn't understand. We gutted that row. Seat 9 hadn't existed in this theater since 2021. I reached out and touched her shoulder. Cold, but not skin cold. Object cold. Like a mannequin that had been sitting in storage. And when I pulled my hand away, her head snapped toward me. Not turned. Snapped. Like a puppet on a loose string. Her eyes met mine. They were hollow. Not black. Not empty. Just wrong. Too wide. Too knowing. And her mouth moved. Just once. A single word, hoarse and dry. Stay. I stumbled backward. Nearly dropped the flashlight. Ran up the aisle, not caring if I made noise. Burst into the lobby and slammed the door shut behind me. The guy was still on the phone. Did you find it? He asked. No, I said, panting. But there's a girl in there. A kid. Silence. Then the man laughed, low and bitter. She's still there. What do you mean? She always is. I thought maybe tonight she wouldn't be. The air left my lungs. What are you talking about? But he'd already hung up. I called the police. Told them someone was trespassing. Maybe lost. They came quickly. Checked the theater. No girl. No hoodie. No seat 9. Just a faint mark on the carpet where the old seat used to be bolted. A dark spot. Almost like a burn. The officer asked if I was sure I saw someone. I said yes. He asked if I wanted to file a report. I said no. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that you touched something that shouldn't exist? That night, I went home and looked up the theater's renovation history. In 2011, a fire broke out in Theater 2. Short circuit in the ceiling. Minimal damage. But one girl died. 12 years old. She'd been separated from her mother during a school screening. She was found hours later. Alone. Seat 9. Burned into the cushion beneath her. They said she must have hidden when the alarm went off. Too scared to run. Or maybe she was trying to stay put, like she'd been told. They never released her name. Just her age. 12. I returned to work the next day. Tried to act normal. But Theater 2 never felt the same. It was always a little colder. Always a little darker. And some nights, employees would find popcorn spilled on the floor of Row B, even when no one had sat there. When Usher claimed he saw a girl walk in during a matinee, he went to check her ticket. She was gone. Last week, I checked the seat chart out of curiosity. Seat 9 doesn't exist in our system anymore. Row B skips from 8 to 10. I showed the general manager. He said that row only has 7 seats now. When I argued, he pulled up the layout. He was right, but I remember standing in front of it. I remember the 8 chairs, and I remember her sitting in the 9th. Sometimes, when the theater is quiet, when the final credits roll and the last patron leaves, I walk past Theater 2 and glance inside. Just a peek. Just long enough to confirm it's empty. And every so often, for just a second, I see her. The girl in seat 9, waiting for someone to answer her question. Waiting for someone to stay. But I won't go back. Because if I do, I might never leave again. When you live alone, you learn to ignore certain noises, pipes settling, the fridge kicking on, a creak in the floorboards. But when you hear glass breaking downstairs at 2 a.m., and every window in your house is supposed to be shatterproof, you stop pretending it's nothing and start wondering who just let themselves in. The house had been my grandmother's, a narrow 2-story tucked at the edge of the woods, miles from the nearest neighbor and even farther from decent cell reception. She left it to me in her will. Everyone else in the family refused to take it, like the property carried a stain no amount of inheritance could scrub out. But I didn't care. I was broke, 25, fresh out of a job and an apartment. A free house was a miracle, stain or not. I moved in on a rainy Tuesday in October, the wind curling around the roof like claws. The inside still smelled like her lavender soap and mothballs, and all the furniture remained untouched, like she'd just stepped out for tea and never returned. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. Quiet. Too quiet. But I needed quiet. Until the noise started. The first time, I thought it was a tree branch hitting the siding. I was upstairs in the guest room, setting up a desk, when I heard it, a short, sharp crack like with splintering. I went outside, flashlight in hand. Nothing. No branch. No storm damage. The second time, it was louder, like a picture frame falling off the wall. I found one of the hallway photos, crooked. The glass wasn't broken, but the nail had bent sideways, like it had been yanked. Still, I rationalized it. Old house. Foundation shift. Weird airflow. Then came the third night, and the sound of glass shattering. It was 2:04 a.m. I had just drifted off when the crash jolted me upright, the kind of noise that doesn't echo because it's too real. I waited, breath held, straining to hear movement. Nothing. Just silence. Then the sound of footsteps on the hardwood below. Slow. Even. Measured. I climbed out of bed, heart thudding, and reached for the bat I kept under the frame. Not because I thought I'd use it, but because empty hands felt too vulnerable. I tiptoed to the door. It was ajar. I could see the hallway, faintly illuminated by the moonlight leaking through the stairwell window. The steps continued, but they weren't coming up. They were circling. The first floor. Like pacing. Or patrolling. I called out. Who's there? Nothing. I crept to the top of the stairs. Peered down. No one in sight. But the front door was open. Just a crack. And beside it, the tall, narrow window was shattered. Spiderwebbed. But no shards on the floor. No draft. Just clean. Like it had cracked from the inside. I backed away. Locked the door again. Closed every window. Turned on every light. Sat in the kitchen, staring at the cracked pane. Until the sun came up. The repairman arrived at 9 o'clock sharp. Told me the glass was old. Brittle. Probably warped from years of moisture. But I knew that wasn't true. That window had been replaced just last year. Shatterproof glass. Tempered. He said sometimes pressure builds in the frame, and the glass snaps on its own. I nodded. Paid him. But I didn't believe it. Not after what I saw the next night. I installed cameras that evening. Cheap ones, sure, but enough to catch anything obvious. Motion activated. Night vision. Set them up in the hallway, the living room, and the porch. Then I waited. It was quiet until 1:53 a.m. Then a click. The sound of the porch light activating. The camera feet stuttered. Then came the sound of the window again. Not a crash this time. Just a long, slow splintering sound. Like bone being twisted. Then the front door creaked open. But the lock hadn't been touched. I had the deadbolt still in place. The camera should have shown someone, anyone. But it glitched out for 30 seconds. When it returned, the door was closed again. And in the living room, there was a single handprint on the mirror. Long fingers. Too long. Pressed flat against the surface. But smudged from the inside. I couldn't breathe. I reviewed the footage a dozen times. Same glitch. Same window. Same 30 seconds of blackout. I called the sheriff's office. Filed a report. They sent a deputy the next day. He took a statement. Walked the property. Found nothing. When I showed him the footage, he frowned. You sure this wasn't you? Sleepwalking. I told him I hadn't slept at all. He made a note. Suggested maybe I get some rest. I decided to leave. Just for a night. Booked a hotel in town. But when I packed a bag and stepped outside, I felt it. That stillness. The kind of hush that happens before something moves. I turned. All the lights in the house were off. I hadn't flipped them. And in the upstairs window, the guest room, something was watching me. Not a face. Just the outline, like a smudge on the inside of the glass. It tilted slightly, then vanished. I didn't go to the hotel. I drove to my sister's, crashed on her couch, silent and stiff. Didn't explain. Didn't know how to. The next morning, I got a notification. Motion detected. Living room camera. Time, 3:12 a.m. I opened the file. The room was empty. For a second. Then the feed warped. The mirror on the wall rippled. Like water. And something stepped through. Not human. Not even alive. Just the shape of a thing with limbs and a grin too wide to be real. It looked directly at the camera and held up one finger. Tapped the glass. Then the feed cut out. I never went back. Put the house on the market. Cheap. Didn't mention the cameras. Didn't mention the window. Someone else bought it within a month, an older couple from out of state. Said they loved the view. Loved how quiet it was. Said it reminded them of somewhere they used to live long ago. They moved in a week later. I never heard from them again. Sometimes, late at night, I get alerts from the old camera system, even though I disconnected it, even though I factory reset everything. The alerts always come at 3:12 a.m. Same file name. Same length, 30 seconds. The thumbnail always shows the same thing. A face pressed against the inside of the cracked window. And this time, it looks just like mine. Most people think libraries are safe, quiet, predictable, sterile. But some books don't want to stay on shelves. Some remember who borrowed them and who didn't return them on time. The library in my town wasn't big, but it was old. Built in 1893, it was one of those stone-carved, two-story places with stained glass windows, creaky floors, and rows of shelves that seemed to shift ever so slightly when you weren't looking. I used to love it as a kid. It felt like a cathedral for quiet people, a refuge. But that changed last winter, when I borrowed a book I shouldn't have. It was a snowy Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day when the streets are empty and the gray sky makes you feel like you're underwater. I was browsing in the back corner of the second floor, the forgotten section between reference and local history. It always smelled faintly of dust and something sweeter, like dried flowers. I liked it there. It felt less observed. That's where I found the book. It wasn't on the shelf, more like wedged behind it. The spine was cracked, the cover plain black with no title. No barcode. No label. I tugged it free and opened it. No author. No publisher. No copyright date. Just a handwritten title on the first page in faded ink. Whispers from the Stacks. I don't know why I took it. Maybe because I thought it was rare. Maybe because I felt like I wasn't supposed to. Maybe because it was already too late. The librarian didn't scan it when I checked out. She was an older woman, with glassy eyes and a voice like gravel. When she saw the book, her hands froze. "Where did you find this?" "Upstairs. In the back corner." She stared at it, then at me. Then, in a voice that dropped nearly to a whisper, "Don't keep it past due." I forced a laugh. "Okay." She didn't smile. She wrapped the book in a paper bag and slid it across the counter like she was handing me an urn. I should have left it there. I should have run. That night, I started reading. It wasn't like a normal book. It didn't have chapters. Just entries. Short paragraphs. Each written from the point of view of a different person. Some recent, some ancient. But all of them had the same tone, frantic, scattered, desperate. I didn't realize what I was reading until entry 23. It was signed Eleanor W., Crestview, 1972. It said. I returned it. I swear I did. I left it at the door. I heard the knocking that night anyway. I shouldn't have opened it. The light inside wasn't from this world. I remember feeling suddenly, violently cold, because that entry was written in the same cursive handwriting I'd seen on the inside cover. It hadn't been printed. It had been written. By hand. In the book. I stopped reading. Tried to sleep. But that night, I heard it. A knock. At my apartment door. 3 soft raps. Measured. Like someone who knew exactly how hard to knock to wake me without disturbing the neighbors. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the ceiling until the sun rose. When I finally opened the door, there was nothing outside, except a single page, torn from the book. It hadn't been there before. It read, Day 1, they give you silence. I returned to the library the next day, book in hand. The librarian wasn't there. A college student manned the desk. He blinked when I showed him the book. Where did you get this? The library. Upstairs. Back corner. He looked confused. We don't have anything back there. That section's been sealed off for months. Mold or asbestos or something. I left the book on the counter and walked away. I should have felt relief. But as I exited, I heard a soft whisper behind me. Day 2. They enter the quiet places. That night, the knocking came again. At 2:11 a.m. 3 knocks. Then 2. Then silence. But when I looked out the peephole, I saw something. Not a person. Not a shadow. A gap. In space. Like reality had creased outside my door, and something was peering through. I didn't open it, but I swear I heard breathing. And then, from somewhere deep in the walls. Day 3. You speak to yourself, and the voice answers. The entries began appearing again. Not in the book. That was gone. They showed up in my own journals. On napkins I hadn't written on. In dreams I barely remembered, etched into fogged mirrors and cold windows. Always in that same script. Always signed by me. One read. Day 4. I looked at the shelves, and they blinked. Another. Day 5. It's not overdue yet. It just wants to be read. I went back to the library. Tried to find the section again. But the stairwell was sealed. A chain across the door. A sign that read, Restricted Access, Archives Relocated. I asked the librarian, a new one now, about Whispers from the Stacks. She frowned. Typed something into the system. Nothing. No record of that title. She smiled. I think you've been reading a little too deep. By day 7, I stopped sleeping. My apartment creaked like it was breathing. The knocking came every hour. Sometimes from the door. Sometimes from the walls. Once from inside the bathroom mirror. The messages changed. Shorter. Urgent. Scratched into surfaces. Written backwards. Scrawled in my handwriting. Return it. We remember. Do. I moved. Left town. Threw away every book I owned. But the knocks followed. Not nightly. Not predictably. But just enough to remind me I hadn't escaped. And last week, I received a package. No return address. Just my name. Inside was the book. Back cover slid open. And a new entry written on the last page. Day 31. I returned it, and it returned me. I buried it in a field. Burned what I could. Blocked every door with salt and locks and prayers I don't believe in. But I know it's not over. Because just now, I heard a knock. And when I turned around, my bookshelf was open. Not the books. The shelf. And from inside, I heard a whisper. Last chance, borrower. Last chance before overdue becomes forever. So if you ever find a book with no title, hidden behind the stacks, don't read it. Don't borrow it. And whatever you do, don't ignore the knock. They say you should stay until the end of the movie, through the credits, past the stingers, out of respect. But in Theater 9, they don't just ask you to stay. They make you. Theater 9 was cursed. That's what everyone at the Briar Point Cineplex said, at least. Not seriously, not out loud, but in the same joking way you say he's got bad luck about someone who's been hit by lightning twice. Bad things happened in Theater 9. Small things, mostly. A guest who went missing for 20 minutes and swore he never left his seat. An employee who found a stack of chairs piled neatly on the ceiling one morning. Rumors of laughter coming from the empty rows after midnight. It was always 9. Never 7. Never 3. Just 9. So of course, that's where I got assigned. It was my second week on the job. I worked closing shifts, the ones nobody wanted. I didn't mind. The quiet suited me. The theater was on its last legs anyway, running old films and dollar tickets, more nostalgia than business. That night we were showing a restored print of Night of the Haunted, a 1971 cult horror flick. Only played once at 10:30 p.m. in Theater 9. 11 people bought tickets. 10 left. I remember checking the numbers at the end of the night. 10 seats vacated. But the projector logs, which record when the infrared sensors pick up warm bodies, still showed one signature in row F. Seat 12. I sighed, assuming someone had fallen asleep. Not the first time. I walked into the theater, flashlight in hand, expecting to wake up a groggy teen or stoner. But seat 12 was empty. At first glance, the seat cushion was still pressed down, like someone had just stood up. The armrests were warm, and on the floor below was a large drink full. No ice melt, no condensation, like it had just been placed there. That's when I heard it. A slow, deliberate shuffle coming from the back of the room, like someone dragging their feet across the carpet. I turned, shined the flashlight. Nothing. Just rows and rows of seats. I called out, We're closed. The shuffle stopped. Then a voice, soft, almost kind, spoke from behind me. You left before the credits. I spun. No one. Not even a shadow. The flashlight flickered. Buzzed. Died. Total darkness. Then the screen turned on. Not the projector, the actual screen. Lit from within. Bright white. Then letters began to appear, scrolling upward. Like in credits. But instead of names, it was messages. One line at a time. You left early. You didn't say goodbye. The movie isn't over. We're still watching. Now it's your turn. The screen flashed red. Then black. And I heard footsteps running toward me. I ran. Tripped on a stair. Hit the emergency exit and burst into the alley. Cold air slapped me in the face. The door slammed behind me. I turned. There was no door. Just a brick wall. I didn't go back in. Called in sick for 2 days. When I finally returned, I asked the projectionist about Theater 9. He looked up, expression unreadable. You saw the credits, didn't you? I said nothing. He nodded. Most people leave early. That's the problem. Then he reached into a drawer and pulled out a stack of old printouts. Each one was a theater log. Same movie. Same seat. Row F. Seat 12. Always the last occupied. And each log had the same final timestamp, 12:06 a.m. Exactly when I heard the voice. I looked up theater blueprints. The emergency exit from 9? It leads to a hallway, not an alley. There's no brick wall outside that side of the building. But I felt it. Touched it. I even scraped my hand on the brick. Still have the scar. The next week, I checked the seating chart again. Just curiosity, I told myself. There was a new booking for Night of the Haunted. Same print. Same time slot. Same theater. 11 tickets sold. And someone had already chosen row F, seat 12. But when I hovered over the seat to see the buyer's name, it was blank. No data. Not unknown. Just nothing. Like the seat had reserved itself. I told the manager. He shrugged. Some seats don't stay empty. What does that mean? He gave me a look like I was being dense. It's a theater. Seats are for watching. You can't leave them lonely too long. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The next night, I stayed late. Waited until the theater was empty. Then I walked into 9. It was cold. Too cold. The kind of cold that sits under your skin. I stood in front of seat 12. It looked normal. But when I reached out to touch it, the cushion hissed. A slow, exhaling like air escaping lungs. I sat anyway, because I needed to know. The lights went out. The screen lit up. And the credits rolled. Only this time. They showed names I recognized. My coworkers. My friends. My own. Next to my name, it read. Now seated. I tried to get up. I couldn't move. I wasn't paralyzed. I just didn't want to leave. I felt watched. And not from the screen. From the other seats. Slowly, the rows filled. Shadowy figures. One by one. All facing the screen. Except one. Directly behind me. Breathing down my neck. I heard the whisper again. You shouldn't have left early. The screen flickered. Cut to black. A new movie started. But I wasn't in the audience anymore. I was on the screen. In grainy black and white. Sitting in seat 12. Staring ahead, mouth slightly open. I looked terrified. And I was. Still am. Because I'm still there. Watching. Being watched. Waiting for the next show to begin. If you ever find yourself in Theater 9, stay through the credits. Clap if you have to. Smile, even if it feels wrong. Because if you don't, you might see your name on the screen, right before it says, now seated, permanent guest. The movie never ends. It started with a hum behind the walls. Then the lights flickered. The floor vibrated. The channels on the TV flipped on their own. And somewhere between the static, a voice whispered, I see you. I was staying at my cousin's place while she and her husband were out of town. Big house in a quiet neighborhood, just far enough from town to make it inconvenient. They'd asked me to house sit for a week, feed the cats, water the plants, and bring in the mail. Easy. I liked being alone. Or at least, I used to. The first night was uneventful. I set my bag in the guest room, ordered takeout, and fell asleep watching late-night sitcom reruns. The place was too big for one person, but the walls were thick, and the silence didn't bother me. That changed on the second night. At exactly 3:08 a.m., I woke to a low hum, like a generator kicking on. It was coming from the guest room wall. I pressed my hand against the paneling. The vibration was real, subtle, but consistent, almost mechanical. I figured it was HVAC or the water heater. The hum didn't last long, maybe 30 seconds. Then it stopped, and everything was still again. I went back to sleep, mildly annoyed. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, 3:08 a.m. Same hum. This time, it lasted a minute. Then the bedside lamp flickered, and the TV turned on. The screen was static, full volume, white noise and blizzard-like flickering. I scrambled out of bed and grabbed the remote. Nothing worked. The buttons didn't respond. Neither did the power switch on the set itself. I yanked the cord from the wall. It didn't turn off. Only when I pulled the plug a second time, physically yanking it from the surge protector, did the screen cut to black. Then, silence again. The next day, I called my cousin. Told her the TV was acting up. She just laughed. "Oh, yeah, it does that sometimes. Ghost in the wires, right?" I asked her if she'd ever heard the humming in the wall. Her tone changed. "Humming? Yeah, around 3 in the morning. Every night so far." There was a pause. Then, "You're sleeping in the guest room?" "Yeah." Another pause. "We haven't used that room since we moved in." "Not really." I frowned. "Why not?" "Just feels weird in there," she said. "Too quiet." "Don't know why." She changed the subject after that. That night, I decided to record it. Set up my phone with the voice memo app, placed it on the nightstand, and tried to sleep. Sure enough, 3:08 a.m. The hum returned. Louder. Deeper. Like it wasn't coming from behind the wall anymore, but from under the floorboards. The bed rattled. The lights buzzed. The door creaked open, not wide, just enough to break the seal. And then the TV turned on again. But this time, there was no static. Just a black screen with a thin white line down the center. Like an old analog feed gone wrong. Then words appeared, flickering it. "You moved." I didn't know what it meant. Moved? Where? From what? I didn't stay to find out. I grabbed my bag and slept on the couch downstairs. But I played back the recording the next morning. It started with silence. Then the hum. Then a soft voice. Not mine. Not my cousin's. Not anyone I recognized. It whispered. "Guest. Again. Welcome." Then a second voice, deeper, layered with distortion. "Lie still. Don't let it see you." And then the static shrieked so loud it broke the speaker. I drove to town the next day. Asked around at a diner. Mentioned the address. The waitress froze. "You're in the Reeve house?" I nodded. She looked down. They used to have a tenant in that room. Back in the 90s. Rented it out to some tech guy. "What happened?" She hesitated. "Folks say he was trying to build something. A signal loop. Something to reach beyond." "Beyond what?" She just shook her head. He disappeared. Room was empty when they found it. But the power bill was still through the roof. I returned that afternoon, determined to check the wall. I pulled the dresser aside. Behind it, I found an outlet plate with no screws, just snapped into place. Behind the outlet, a hole. Inside, wires. A mess of them. Old coaxial cables, phone lines, even a VHS tape, split open and gutted. They were wired into a small, silent box like a modem, but ancient. It wasn't plugged in, but it hummed. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to. Instead, I set up a second camera, pointed it at the wall. Then I left the house. That night, from the safety of my motel room, I watched the feed on my laptop. Nothing happened for the first hour. Then, at 3:08 a.m., the camera flickered. The screen warped. And in the lens distortion, I saw the guest room shift. The walls bowed slightly outward. The TV turned on by itself. And something stepped out of the static. I paused the video, went frame by frame. It had no face, no skin, just a shape, like the outline of a man made entirely of scanlens and distortion. It stood in front of the wall, looked toward the camera, and held up a hand. 5 fingers, then 4, then 3, counting down. I shut the laptop, drove back to the house. When I got there, the front door was open. The guest room door was shut. Light bled out from beneath it, flickering, blue-white, like a TV left on in the dark. I walked down the hallway. Every step made my teeth vibrate. When I reached the door, I heard it. Last night, I opened the door. The room was empty. No furniture, no bed, no TV, just a chair in the middle, facing the wall. And on that wall, the curtain of static, moving, alive. I don't remember walking into it, but I remember waking up the next morning in the hallway. Door shut, room back to normal, TV off. But the outlet, The strange wiring? Gone. Like it had never been there. I left the house that morning. Left the key on the counter. Told my cousin I had to go early. She didn't ask why. Maybe she knew. It's been 3 months. Every night, at 3:08 a.m., I wake up. There's no TV in my room, but I still hear the static. Still hear the hum behind the walls. And sometimes, from the corner of the room, I see it. That shape. Watching me. Counting down. One hand raised. Now only one finger left. And I think I know what happens when it gets to 0. Because last night, it whispered again. You stayed too long. Now you're the guest. And it's your turn to let someone in. There was a seat in the back corner of Theater 6 that no one ever sat in. Not because it was broken, or dirty, or blocked, but because people said if you sat there, you wouldn't be the one to get up. You'd leave, but something else would stand in your place. It was my last week working at the Violet Pine Cinema, a 2-screen relic tucked between a vape shop and a shuttered gym on the edge of town. I'd been there almost 2 years, long enough to memorize the concession combos, long enough to ignore the moldy corners and the flickering lights. I'd gotten a new job in the city, and this was supposed to be my final shift. A quiet Tuesday night. 2 showings for customers total. Just me and Javier, the projectionist, killing time between ticket stubs and garbage runs. At around 9 p.m., just as the final screening was starting, a man walked in. Didn't say a word. Didn't buy a ticket. He just stood in the middle of the lobby, looking at the framed poster for Phantom Return, the only movie we were still playing. He looked wrong. Not homeless, not obviously threatening, but like someone who didn't belong in this world anymore. His clothes were old but not vintage. His hands were raw and pink, like he'd been washing them too much or rubbing them against something rough. And his eyes, they were glassy. Not empty, but full of something I didn't want to name. Can I help you? I asked. He didn't look at me. Didn't blink. I'm here for the seat, he said. My stomach dropped. The seat. He nodded. Back left. Top row. Theater 6. I didn't know what to say, because no one ever asked for that seat. There was an old story among the staff, one of those passed down between shifts kinds of legends. Theater 6 had a seat no one liked. Top row, back left corner, wedged between the wall and the projector housing. Customers who sat there sometimes left early, pale and disoriented. One guy vomited all over the stairs after only 10 minutes of a comedy film. Another claimed someone had been sitting next to him whispering in a language he didn't understand, even though the seat beside him was empty. Most of us thought it was just an old theater myth. Until tonight. I hesitated. Sir, that seat isn't. He turned. His eyes locked onto mine. Reserved. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Like he already knew. Like someone had been holding the seat for him. I didn't stop him when he walked into the theater. I don't think I could have. 15 minutes passed. I stared at the security monitors. Checked my phone. Tried to feel normal. But something gnawed at me. I switched the feed to Theater 6. The movie flickered. Audience still. Nothing out of place. Except that seat. Back row. Left side. Occupied. Except the man wasn't sitting. He was standing behind it. Not facing the screen. Facing the audience. Like he was waiting for someone. Like he wasn't the one using the seat. I called Javier in the booth. Do me a favor, check Theater 6. Why? I just need to know. He sighed. Fine. Give me a minute. I watched the screen as Javier entered. He walked up the aisle slowly, scanning the rows. Past the middle. Reached the top. I leaned in. The man was gone. Just gone. Javier stood where he had been. Looked around. Then he did something I'll never forget. He sat in the seat. Don't, I started to say. But it was too late. The screen glitched. A sharp flicker, frame cut, burn, distortion. Then a new feed appeared. Not the movie. The theater. But viewed from the top corner. Like a security cam that didn't exist. I saw Javier in the seat. Then I saw him stand up. And the man, the original man, slid into his place. And smiled. I ran to the booth. Javier wasn't there. The seat was empty. I sprinted to Theater 6. Only 2 customers looked up as I burst in, panting. Where's the guy who just came in? They blinked. What guy? The one who sat in the back? They glanced up. Seat was empty. Untouched. Except the armrest was wet, like someone had just gripped it with a shaking hand. I checked the back door. Locked. Checked the lobby. Empty. Checked the cameras. They showed nothing. Just a flicker. A blur. Then everything resumed like nothing had happened, except for one detail. On the seat chart, back at the ticket terminal, there was a reservation. Not from tonight. From 30 years ago. Name, Javier Ortega. Same as our projectionist. Dated, March 12, 1993. That day, the theater opened. I tried to call him. His number was disconnected. His locker was empty the next morning. The manager said they never had a Javier on staff. But I remember him. I remember his voice, his jokes, his cigarette breaks. And I remember that seat. The theater closed 2 weeks later. Structural issues, they said. Demolition crews came in. But when they tore down Theater 6, they found something strange. A chair bolted to the foundation. Old, rotten, covered in writing. Dozens of names carved into the leather. Some dates scratched beside them. Some just initials. And in the center of the seat cushion, reserved. I don't go to movies anymore. I don't sit in the back. I avoid theaters altogether, if I'm honest. Because sometimes, in quiet moments, I hear it. The creak of a seat behind me. The soft shuffle of footsteps approaching from the left. And a voice, low, measured, gentle. Your name's next. Your seat is ready. Don't keep it waiting.